I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council for July the 9th, 2018. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Jameson?
Here.
Toussaint?
Here.
Waite?
Here.
Zimmerman?
Present.
Mayor Richardson?
Here. Karen, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes. Please join me in standing and doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Manager's report.
Got a couple of things to report. One, we heard back from Caltrans on our request for the signal at Mission Drive and Skip Mesa Road, and they have denied that request and are asking us to look at a long-term vision of a roundabout at that intersection. So you'll have to decide on that in the future. So, second, we heard from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation on our grant request for our water meter upgrade project, and we did not make the cut on that, so we did not get that grant. So, and then third, I'd like to announce that at the end of this calendar year, I'll be retiring as City Manager Solvang. I appreciate the 12 years that I've served here and really enjoy the councils that I've worked for, but I wanted to just let the public know that.
That's a personal disappointment for me. This guy has been a great city manager. He's responsible for the city that we live in now. It's done a great job with us. So now you got to find somebody just like you to replace you.
And that concludes my report.
Public communications, written or verbal. At this time, please direct comments to the City Council regarding consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Council. Speakers are limited to, excuse me, 3 minutes. I have 3 speaker slips. Chris? I wasn't going to attempt your name again. I'm sorry.
Sorry. It's Dearness. I know it's a tough one. It's part Danish, part Norwegian. Comes from the old country, I guess. At any rate, thank you so much for all the work that you do. I really do mean that. It's kind of a thankless job because not only do you have your day jobs, but then you have to run around and work in the city, and that's a tough thing to do. So I really appreciate that. The reason why I'm here today specifically is to talk about an article that was printed in Newshawk on June 26th, and it had to do with the grand jury finding that Solvang is in moderate difficulty. I don't know how to couch this issue. I wouldn't say you guys are in trouble, other than to say that it's an issue that apparently the grand jury of Santa Barbara has thought that you guys should look at as a council. And they made an interesting recommendation, which was to bring this before the rest of the city so that the Solvang residents would have a chance to actually hear what you have to say about this and educate them, and at the same time figure out what they think, what they should be thinking about this. Because unfortunately the city, as you probably well know, is on the hook with respect to CalPERS. So, for example, and I'll make this one statistic short and sweet. In 2008, before the correction, CalPERS was 100% funded. The city was in great shape. Everything was good. And then we had the correction in 2009. CalPERS lost 30, 40, 50% of its value in terms of its capital assets, and they had to dig their way out of their hole, and they haven't done that yet. They're still maybe at 68%. Maybe the city's a little bit better, but nevertheless, that's using a higher discount rate, which is the 7.25% rate. And if we bring this down to where it probably should be, where the CalPERS is trying to get to, which might be around 6.5%, then the unfunded liability that we're facing as a city becomes worse. And it gets worse because if we have another correction, that fund, CalPERS fund, will once again find itself in a hole, and we will have to make up the difference again. So this is not an easy solution. I don't know what the solution is, to be honest with you. All I know is that it should be studied, and I think, and I recommend that the council find somebody, an outside source or whatever, to study the issue and try to figure out what we want to do as a community so that the Solvang residents have a chance to voice their opinion as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Roy, did you have a comment? No? I looked like you were... Yeah, would you like to mention the grand jury report and how we respond to that? Or
Well,
would-
the process is be given a certain amount of time to respond to the grand jury report, and I haven't read the grand jury report, but since I'm old and have all this white hair now, I can tell people that, sure, you want to look at things, but this council has studied that issue before and been on top of the PERS expense issue. Happily for Solvang doesn't have the public safety employee, so we don't have the police department or a fire department that we pay for directly out of salaries and make contributions to CalPERS. So while throughout the state there are indeed lots of cities who are taking big hits and having budget problems because of what CalPERS is doing to their budgets, this city council and previous council started thinking about this issue ahead of time, and your CalPERS issue is not going to be fun, but it's manageable.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Tracy Farhad?
It's for number 7.
Sorry?
It's for number 7.
Oh, it was? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'll put over number 7. Shelley Sim.
Or Shelby.
Shelby.
One of those.
It's close enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayor,
Starts
Council.
with an- starts with an S.
Shelby Sim, President and CEO, visit the Santinez Valley. Brad Vidro, retiring, isn't against the rules. Can we change that? It took me 2 years to pronounce your last name right. I mean, let alone. Brad, you've been an incredible asset to this town, to the Santinez Valley. Thank you very much. How much longer? End of the year, so we got some time. All right, fantastic. Thanks again, Brad. I'm here to sing the praises of the Solvang CVB. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, but Visit the Santinez Valley loves working with Tracy Farhad and her team at the Solvang CVB. They do an incredible job of promoting the city, of working with us and the other tourism partners, not only in the Santinez Valley, but in the county, to make sure we're not duplicating efforts, but making all of our efforts stronger. And so we certainly appreciate that. And then I'd just like to, final thing is to thank publicly and on the record the Santinez Valley Rotary Club for an amazing 4th of July celebration. From the parade all the way up through to the fireworks, it was amazing. We all know that they're all volunteers, friends, families, kids out there from early in the morning till late at night, making it happen in Solvang for the entire San Ynez Valley and much of the Santa Barbara County. So thanks to them, and thanks again to the Solvang for your partnership with Visit the San Ynez Valley.
Thank you, Shelby.
Yeah.
Now, that was the last speaker slip I had for public comment. Does anyone else wish to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll go forward with the agenda. Council comments and requests. Would you like to start, Neil?
Yep, just want to welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight, and look forward to it. Thank you.
Karen?
I'd also like to welcome everyone and thank you all for coming out tonight. I also would like to thank Brad for his help and support with my being a new member of this council. He's really given me some very good information and has been a great resource for me, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Ryan?
Mine were just regarding the item number 1 meetings. Seems like we haven't been able to get anything on the calendar, so I'd like to see when we could prioritize that.
I think your director was out of town for a long time. You haven't heard back on the meeting requests? We'll follow up with that. They've not responded on dates, so.
Got it. I guess my next issue would be if you're going to be retiring, do we need to be bringing anything up to the council in terms of possibly recruiting a new city manager?
Yeah, I would recommend you hire an executive recruitment firm. There's quite a few available that do that particular process. Bob Murray and Associates just did the one for Lompoc, so they're very familiar with people that are maybe looking to go to the Central Coast area. So we can bring a item back. We can get some estimates on that.
Maybe on the next agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for tonight.
Joni?
Well, I too would like to thank the Rotary. It was a great parade, and Karen, myself, and my granddaughter had the privilege of riding in what I call the Beautiful Beast. That's the new ladder truck that the casino has provided for the San Ynez Valley. It is an amazing piece of I don't know what to call it. You sit inside of it. It's very noisy. So we all had our little earmuffies on that were radios, and we could talk. The four of us could talk to one another. It was delightful. And, of course, we were yelling in it also, saying hi to people in the crowd. I'm sure that the other three didn't appreciate that. But I just want to thank the our local fire department here for allowing us to do that. It was a real thrill. It's huge. It's shiny. It has dials and whistles and hoses and things that go up and down, and it is an amazing, amazing piece of equipment. And it's not only for putting out fires, mind you, the big ladder, but it's also for performing rescues, because that ladder can reach way out, hopefully helping somebody with ropes that's down maybe in a canyon, whatever. So it is a magnificent piece of equipment, and I really feel privileged that we got to ride in it. And for I don't know how long, 7 years, I've been asking my granddaughter to please come and ride in one of the parades with me. And she's always said, no, Tutu, I'd rather watch. And I said, okay, okay. So this time I asked her, and she couldn't get in that truck fast enough. And I said, oh, we had to do is buy a $1.6 million truck for you. And she said, yeah, it works, doesn't it? The other comment I have is that Alan Hancock has a fundraising opportunity going on in the Valley to help provide funds for recent graduates from our high school to go to Hancock free for the first 2 years of their education. And they have sent us a proclamation that I wish to have presented possibly at the next meeting for our approval. And then they are going to have a celebration sometime in August where they want to introduce the 45 students that are going from our local high school and from Dunn School to Alan Hancock starting in August. So it's really a cool program, and maybe it'll encourage kids to go to Hancock as opposed to going over the hill to Santa Barbara City, because the kids in the Valley do not qualify for that money because we're in the Hancock district. Anyway, I just encourage you, if somebody calls you and asks you to help contribute, I would encourage you to say yes. Thank you, that's all.
Yeah, I want to join Shelby and others in congratulating and thanking the volunteers of the Rotary for the wonderful parade and the fireworks and the barbecue and the effort that they put forth. They really worked, and if you'll notice, the day after, on Thursday, the place was absolutely clean. There was no evidence there was a crowd at all. And we did have a crowd. The streets were lined with cars. There's just no question about it. And then the crowds on the sidewalks watching the parade. It was just an amazing thing. And we want to thank the Rotary for that, and we will be celebrating that with them with a resolution. So again, that's all I had. Next would be the correspondence received by City Council. Is there anybody that wants to make any comments on these? Nancy Emerson has sent questions and comments about the budget. Nancy, we'll have to get back with you on that, since the budget's already passed. And then there was a letter on support for the trail alignment on 3A and 5. So any comments on those? On to item 4, which is the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to pull any of the consent calendar items? Seeing none, then can I have a motion accepting the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda as is.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Can I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Toussaint?
Yes.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Waite?
Yes.
Mayor Richardson?
Yes, and that passes with a 5-0. Next is the regular agenda, item 5. I have a conflict, so I'll be recusing myself from this item. Are you going to recuse yourself?
And I evidently, I also have a conflict. If the Route 2 and 1 are discussed, that would automatically kick me out, so I'm going to be recusing myself also.
And based on that, the next long-term individual on the council is Neil Zimmerman, so he'll take the gavel right now. Do you want to work from there or here? Here. I'll give you that. You can. Oh, yeah.
I have a question for our legal counsel. We do have 2 council members that are recusing themselves from this, and one of the members, our mayor, will be sitting in the audience as a resident. So if I could be refreshed on the rules and regulations regarding the appropriateness of him making comments. I mean, I just want to make sure that this is fair to the general public, because it is assumed, even though he is a resident, he still is the mayor. So I would like to know how that works exactly, or if he should sit quietly in the audience or actually leave the room.
The short answer is that it's permissible under these circumstances for him to remain in the room and to make public comment. The longer answer is that has now become settled law under the FPPC rules and regulations that when you have a personal interest involved as your source of conflict, and that personal interest, there's like 2 or 3 different exceptions, but one of them is where the source of conflict is your personal residence and it's owned solely by you and your spouse, then you don't have to leave the room and you are allowed to make public comment, but you can't vote on the matter. So this would be one of those circumstances.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Item 5, Sunnyfield Spur Bike Trail, final alignment.
Okay. Staff report?
Good evening, City Council members and members of the community. Matt Vanderlinden, your Public Works Director and City Engineer.
Can't hear you, Matt.
Can you hear me now? It's on. Okay. Well, I'll talk loud. Okay, so to begin, I thought it would be helpful to just mention that I've kind of got the impression that there's a little bit of a misconception regarding the public right-of-way. And I would just mention that the concept of public right-of-way for use by the public, placed in trust with the governing agency, predates cars by probably over 100 years. So when public roads were first created, or public right-of-way was first created, it was a time when the streets were filled with pedestrians primarily and horses and buggies. So I just wanted to mention that so that people understand that there's kind of crept in over the years, more recently, in modern times, the thinking that roads are for cars, but they're not just for cars. They're for all modes of uses, including public utilities and other such purposes. So I just kind of wanted to mention that as a point of clarification. So as the City Council's aware, Alta Planning and Design was selected as our consultant to do the Sunnyfield Spur alignment study, and they began their work on February 20th, 2018, so just a few months ago. They worked diligently to produce a draft report and presentation documents. We had a public workshop on May 30th, 2018, so just a little over a month ago. And in that workshop, various alignments were, potential alignments were presented. Based on that May 30 workshop, alignment 3 and 5 were identified as the top 2 alignments. And however, the northern portion of alignment 3, which is the portion that runs along Alamo Pintado Creek, it was identified that would require major slope stabilization and reinforcement along the bank of the creek. And in addition, the property owner there at 889 Colding Avenue indicated significant opposition to the northern part of that alignment because it would run directly along the east side of his private property, his private residence. Also recently, the fourth grant funding cycle of the Active Transportation Program was issued. And at a special meeting of June 18th, 2018, the City Council approved a contract amendment with Alta for them and authorized them to proceed with an Active Transportation Program, or ATP, Cycle 4 grant application. And it is necessary for the City Council to select a preferred alignment alternative at this time so that the preferred alignment can be properly incorporated into the ATP Cycle 4 grant application. Recognizing this, the City Council also during their meeting of June 11 requested that the alignment study, the completion of the alignment study be expedited and move forward. Originally, we had planned to bring this item to the City Council on July 23rd, so the second council meeting in July. However, that wouldn't have provided our consultant enough time to incorporate all the information into the grant application. So the City Council requested that their study be, the completion of the study be expedited. We worked with our consultant and accomplished that, and are here today with the final completed study. And I also wanted to mention that shortly after the June 18th special meeting, a hybrid alignment was identified. And this hybrid alignment is shown on the overhead here. It's alignment 3A, we're calling it alignment 3A-5. And this alternative eliminates the northerly portion of alignment 3 along Alamo Pintado Creek. And that is the section that had the controversy associated with it, or the portion of alternative 3 that had the controversy associated with it because of the slope stabilization and bank reinforcement required, and also the opposition of the property owner. So eliminating that well, that portion of alignment 3 also included a major component of costs for that alignment. So in looking at this alignment, this new hybrid alignment 3A-5, staff contacted the two property owners where easements would be required to implement this alternative. And the property owner at 889 Colding Avenue has indicated their willingness to grant the necessary easement along the northeast corner of their property, so long as the city agrees never to construct the northern portion of alignment 3 along Alamo Pintado Creek that would run directly along the east side of their property. And also the property owner north of Coyote Creek Road has indicated a willingness to at least discuss and negotiate with the city regarding a possible acquisition of an easement by the city. So staff recommends that the City Council accept the final Sunnyfields Spur Trail study, approve alignment 3A-5 as the preferred alternative, and direct staff to include alignment 3A-5 in our ATP Cycle 4 grant application. As far as fiscal impact, there's no direct fiscal impact from approving the alignment study and selecting a preferred alignment. It should be noted that the total implementation cost of alignment 3A-5 is approximately $3.4 million. That's including easement acquisitions. And although this cost is greater than that of alignment 5 alone, it is still $1.25 million less than the cost of alignment 3 by itself, the original alignment 3. And funding to cover 78% of the project cost is being requested through the city's ATP Cycle 4 grant application, with 22% of matching funds to be provided by the city. And that concludes my staff report. I'm available for any questions you may have. Actually, I did want to look at one thing, just to clarify, one other further item. working? Yeah, I think the batter's dead. I'm gonna go up there.
Should we turn the lights off to make it easier to see?
Oh. Helps if you turn it on. Okay, so I guess I can sit back here then. By the microphone. Okay, so I just wanted to point out one of the areas of a lot of questions and concern is this little corner right here. And so with the previous alignment 3 would have started here where this 3A piece is and would run along Rebuild Drive, not along the shoulder of the road, but in the open space area there, and then run along this property right here between the creek, the Alamo Pintado Creek. It's kind of hard to see, but it's this sort of grayish blue line that goes through here. But alignment 3, the north part, would run between the creek and this property line right here. So that little white line there is the property line that was in contention or whatever with alignment 3. And there's significant erosion along the bank, the west bank of Alamo Pintado Creek here. And so it was going to be really difficult to route the bike path between the eroded bank of the creek and this property line. And we may have had to acquire easement along from this property owner along this side. And again, the property owner was opposed to this, very strongly opposed to this, that alternative and that alignment. So right now, with this alignment 5 here, there would be a proposed bridge along this little branch creek that is tributary to Alamo Pintado Creek. And then it would follow an existing bicycle pedestrian horse trail easement that goes along Coyote Creek Road here, the private Coyote Creek Road. It's a gravel road. And then it would get to the bridge, the private bridge, existing private bridge over Alamo Pintado Creek. And that's where the existing easement ends. So we may still have to acquire an easement from this property owner in this corner. And so, but we've discussed that with them, and they've indicated, as I indicated in the staff report, a willingness to work with the city to grant an easement so long as the city council assures them that a trail would not go along the side of his property here. And then so that's the first easement, possibly right at this corner. And then the second easement would be, so alignment 5 would shift the bike path north of this part of Coyote Creek Road onto this parcel here, which is the old, for those who've been around a while, that's the old nursery property. And so there's a row of trees here, so the bike path would go north of those trees and run along the north side of those trees all the way to Sunnyfields Park. And right now there's walking paths along the perimeter of Sunnyfields Park. So those walking paths would be basically redone and the fencing here redone to create something similar to like this, or maybe even like this. And so the bike path would not actually go in Coyote Creek Road right here. It would be off of the road, separated from the road, all the way to the park, and then through the park out to Alamo Pintado Road. And so we have another little exhibit. So staff prepared this exhibit just for illustrative purposes and clarification. But So this is Rebuild Drive and Colding Avenue. This is the Alamo Pintado Creek, and this green line here is the city limits. This is Coyote Creek Road that then curves down with the existing bridge and goes down towards Highway 246. So you can, and these yellow lines are property lines and right-of-way lines, but this is an approximate overlay of property lines and an aerial photograph. So it's not highly precise, but it gives you the general idea. So, you know, with this recommended alignment 3A-5, cyclists would go along the easement here in a separated bike path, separated from this private road, but running parallel to it, up to this point, then cross the bridge, and then at this point, they may have to traverse this little corner of this parcel here, and then get on to this property here, and run along the north side of these trees into Sunning Fields Park, and then the fencing in this path would be modified. You know, we'd have to look at that, exactly how that would be done. The details of that haven't been worked out yet. But anyway, so with this alignment 3A-5, one easement possibly right here in this corner would be needed as cyclists and pedestrians cross just the corner of that property on over to here, and then we'd need to get an easement along here. So those are the two easements, but I wanted to just clarify that because there's, and this is the area where there's been a lot of scour along Alamo Pintado Creek, and it would be very expensive and difficult to route the bike path through this section. So anyway, I just wanted to present that to hopefully clarify kind of what the situation looks like for folks. Anyway, so that now concludes my staff report. I'm available for any questions you have.
Any questions? Any questions for staff or Matt?
Yes. Do you have a blow-up picture of where the bridge would cross into Creekside if we're doing the hybrid?
No, just the other previous exhibit. Actually, I can.
Number 2 bridge? Is it the number 2 bridge, Matt?
Yeah, that would be the 2-5 hybrid. So I'm just looking for exactly where that bridge would cross. Okay.
The 3A-5.
Well,
Sorry, 3.
yeah,
Sorry, 3.
this
3A.
Yeah, so
5, but
basically,
it's
with alternative 2 and 3, the bridge would be in the same location. That was what kind of caused a little bit of early, confusion. But yeah, so it would essentially line up with pretty close with the intersection of Holly Lane and Rebuild Drive. And if you happen to walk along this or ride along this section of the path, it's kind of hard to see it because all this the arrowhead here and all this marking. But right in this area, the sort of ledge that the bike path is on sort of flares out and widens, and it's an ideal location for constructing an abutment of a bridge on this side. But anyway, so it's about 500 yards south. This is the little access road off of Highway 246 that goes down to the bike path. So from this point, it's about 500 yards back to that point. But we have Alta and city staff have investigated it, out in the field, and identified that would work out pretty well. And then this area here, it's kind of a raised part of the berm that runs along Rebuild Drive and Alamo Pintado Creek, and there's basically an open area at the top of the berm where the bridge could land on the other side. So we have investigated that in the field to just kind of confirm that it's feasible and no huge unsurmountable hurdles or anything. Does that answer your question, or?
Yes, it does, because I had seen some talk going back and forth regarding a possible 2-4, and I see that that's completely off the table, and we're specifically looking at the 3A-5.
Right. Yeah, and as I mentioned, this part of 3A is 3A, this portion of 2 and 3 are the same, so.
Anything else? Ryan?
Nope.
All right. Thank you, Matt. All right. Now we'll move on to public comment. First up, we have Tracy Beard from Solvang Chamber. And then after Tracy, we have Nancy Emerson.
Hello, Council. As a community leader, the Solvang Sunny Fields bike path, I look at the same bikes on the cameras that were going back and forth all weekend as I had dinner there. I would really like you to take a look at the video to make sure as we're doing this count that we don't have the same bicycles back and forth riding. It is, our students don't have a bike rack at the high school, nor do very many students ride their bikes to school anymore. We have no sidewalks to the high school, but we have, and they're not in your city limits, the high school isn't, but we have your children, your grandchildren, and your Solvang children, and you want a grant for a side, bike path, but yet we don't have sidewalks. I think we need to reconsider. Thank you.
Would you ask the public not to applaud or boo? It kind of intimidates those who are speaking.
Okay, can I please everyone just... Okay. All right, gotcha. All right, next up is Nancy Emerson.
Mayor, but Mr. Zimmerman and council members who are still on the dais. I sent you an email after studying the reports and the minutes from the city council meeting that I wasn't able to attend, and I apologize for not being able to do that. But we were moving, and we no longer live in Creekside. So I'm not speaking as a Creekside resident. My concern is the cost of the bridge across the creek to rebuild. When I looked at the budget, that bridge is going to cost $995,000. And the total cost, that's almost a third of the total cost of this project. And you have an existing bridge on Coyote Creek Road. So it really surprised me that we were talking now about 2 bridges crossing the creek rather than 1, and that this bridge costs so much money. It's nice to say that we may get a grant for 85%, I believe it is, of the project. But Matt's a very honest guy, and in his report, he mentioned that it probably was a long shot because we're not a kind of neglected area. Yeah. So if we want to do this project, and I think the consensus of people was that a bike path would be a good thing, it seems to me that we need to try to do it as cost effectively as possible, and that we don't need to have 2 bridges across the creek, and that it would be better to eliminate 3A. And I haven't heard or read anything that would make me change my opinion about that. So someone's going to have to convince me, and I would hope that they will have to convince you too, that that bridge is so important that we're willing to add almost a third of the cost of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. No, we could wait, yeah. Okay, next up we have Kirk, excuse me for not being able to read the last name, Nordgren. And after Kirk, we have Carl Butler.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kirk Nordgren, and I'm here as the president of the Santa Ynez Valley Cycling Club. And just a couple of comments. First of all, I just spent the last week, had the opportunity to be in Chicago, Illinois for the last week, which is a slightly larger city than Solvang. But I did not have a car while I was there. I took a train from the airport, I rented a bike, I walked, and it was amazing to me. I actually took a boat tour to look at the architecture, and it was amazing to me the planning that went into that city. A long time ago, some men and women, I don't know if they were government or just citizens, decided that, you know, it's worth it for us to create a city that we want to live in if we make some sacrifices. You know, there were businesses that were affected, there were citizens that were affected, but to create an infrastructure that benefits everybody, a transportation infrastructure. And as someone visiting that city, it was amazing to experience. And I've lived here for 7 years in the Santa Ynez Valley, and I think I've been hearing about this potential spur trail as long as I've lived here. Yeah, this would be a great way. It would be an improvement. It's a small improvement in a series of improvements that could help our transportation become more friendly for bikes and pedestrians. But it's a needed improvement. And just a note on, I do like this alignment. This is the first time I'm seeing this hybrid, but the reason that we need 3A and a connection up to the park is because bike paths are used when they're easy to get on and off. And right now we have one entrance to this bike path, which is dangerous. We've talked about that. And we have the opportunity to add 2 more with this plan, through a neighborhood or through the park. And that's a great opportunity to expand the use of this path for the community. Sure, we don't need to have access through that Creekside neighborhood. We've existed for how long here without it? But think about the opportunity for Solvang residents, for Santa Ynez Valley community members to access the path through that neighborhood, whether they need to get to school, whether they need to get to the pool, whether they're just involved in getting from one side of the valley to the other. I think the access through the park will be more utilized by people who are recreational cyclists, but I think community members looking for transportation will use the neighborhood route. Thank you.
Carl Butler.
My name is Carl Butler. I reside in the floodplain, or the floodway, I guess, more technically correct. I live at the end of Creekside Drive. Previously, I provided the council with FEMA flood control maps showing that the existing proposal for the Holly Bridge falls within the floodway. And the fact that it's in that floodway, there are certain restrictions that FEMA has placed on anything that's built in there. And the key word that they use is encroachment. There should be no encroachment in the floodway. And that bridge is going to be within the boundaries of the floodway opposite Holly. I'll use an example of encroachment. You're going to have bulldozers come in there. They're going to level a pathway up there. You're going to have a heavy drilling rig come in, sinking piers, and you're going to have a degradation of the actual stability of it was mentioned here earlier that it's not a berm. It's a levee. It's there for flood control purpose. And the point I'm trying to make is that you should at least get FEMA's approval prior to proceeding with this project. And I don't know if that has been done. I mentioned it at the last meeting, and you have to start with them to sign off on it. And I can't see a FEMA official okaying the Holly Bridge with all the construction that will be required there in light of what happened in Montecito. So in conclusion, the council might want to have FEMA diminish the floodway footprint if they want to proceed with this proposal. And I'm a little confused. Are you going to still have bikes coming down, rebuild, and coming up over the levee and then connecting from that direction? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Jan Butler. And after Jan, we have Debbie Brayman. Is Jan here?
Bad foot, so. I live at 2198 Creekside Drive. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this evening. There's lots of reasons why this is a bad idea to have a bike path channeled through Creekside. There's not a soul I have talked to that really believes that this is even being considered. What I have noticed in living there is that we see young mothers with baby carriages, sometimes 3 across, walking the streets. We see elderly people that are out walking their dogs, sometimes with therapy dogs. We see clinic people and hospital people hiking and walking in the streets because these streets have been considered so long as safe streets because there's no through traffic and there's no fast-moving traffic. You know, if there is, it's illegal. But we really do not see that in Creekside. It makes it very, very pleasant community to live in. We do notice that there are impediments to walking in the sidewalks. For instance, on Creekside and on Colding, the mailboxes are built into the sidewalks. There are trees and plants that sometimes overlap the sidewalks. We have basketball hoops in the sidewalks. We see a number of reasons why people prefer to walk the streets. They're wider, they're safer, they're less likely to stumble over a lot of these impediments. It's never been a problem for people. No one complains about it because we do have these very safe streets, largely because there is no fast-moving traffic through there, whether it is cyclists or it is cars. We do have another problem, and that is that in our area, a lot of people choose to put a lot of storage in their garages. The homes largely are not huge, so then they park on their driveways. That means that any additional parking is in the streets. We have visitors that come that need to park. We have students that are coming back from college that need to park. We have utility vehicles, service vehicles that need to park along the street. So, you know, any additional traffic of any kind in that area creates a problem for all of these people. I am hopeful that you will see this as being a very bad alternative. It's just not a smart one. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jen. Debbie Brayman. And then after Debbie, we have Melissa Nathan.
Hi, I'm Debbie Brayman. I'm a Creekside resident, and I'd like to comment on the 3A element of the ALTA recommended Sunnyfield Spur Trail. When the Spur project first came to light in December, the intention seemed to be focused on finding a route that connected the existing 246 bike path to the park. That is something that is recognized by all in the community as a legitimate need. However, the suggested route at that time went directly through Creekside, which was not welcomed by your constituents for the numerous valid reasons which were presented and voiced at that meeting. We all know the outcome of the May workshop and the 6 different alignments that were presented. Your Creekside constituents, both at the workshop and those not in attendance, have been overwhelmingly supportive of Alignment 5, which utilizes existing infrastructure, minimizes the environmental impact to the creek, and presented the most responsible of budgets. But it seems that somewhere during the process, the focus has shifted to a perceived urgent need to connect the Creekside neighborhood to the 246 bike path. What does the hybrid alignment achieve? What is the purpose of the 3A bridge when Creekside is already bike path connected by way of Alamo Pintado and will ultimately be connected by way of the Alignment 5? It begs the question, who has been crying out for this $1 million bridge, this unnecessary, superfluous bridge? At what point was this alternative presented to the constituents of Creekside? We just found out about it within the last few days. No one that I've been talking to during my canvassing of the neighborhood can justify the environmental impact to the creek or see any financially justifiable logic to the cost. This hybrid route equates to an estimated 39% of the overall project, when Alignment 5 is sitting right there staring us in the face as being the best alternative. You all ran with campaign promises to listen to your Solvang citizens. Yet, who of you have been knocking on the doors of the neighborhood, asking for their opinions and trying to explain what these issues are? Who can say that this preferred alignment is in the best financial interest for the citizens of Solvang? I ask that you reconsider the 3A bridge element and remove it from the alignment. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
Hello. I'm Melissa Nathan. I live on Creekside Drive. The vast majority of Creekside residents that I have spoken to vehemently oppose this project, specifically Element 3A, and its bridges, potential sharrows, paths, and or lanes dissecting and intruding into their neighborhood. The proposed 3A $1 million bridge to nowhere is not being built for what it truly is. It is not a small path for a few children to pedal to school on. The Alta study, although pretty with its colorful graphs and price tag, does not adequately delve into the true impacts the project will have on the biological and other resources of the Alamo Pintado Creek and the neighborhood. The EIR that will be prepared will show that the proposed Holly Bridge will dissect and further fragment this sensitive area. This fragmentation is 100% avoidable. I would surmise that CEQA and NEPA will force the council to consider less impactful options. There are serious and realistic doubts that the federal agencies, specifically the regulatory arm of the Corps of Engineers, will issue the required Clean Water Act permit for bridge construction when one or more bridges already exist. The most logical, environmentally feasible, and fiscally responsible option is the soon-to-be replaced bridge at 246 and EP, Nielsen's Bridge. This bridge will be paid for and maintained by Caltrans and not the residents of Solvang. The bridge will also include bike lanes for the safety and convenience of users. We all agree bicycling is a wonderful sport, hobby, and mode of transport. However, the Creekside neighborhood and Alamo Pintado Creek are not the places to host this type of a project. Alignment 5 or the Nielsen's Bridge are the best and only options. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Richard Lane. And after Richard, we have Nick D. Croce.
I'd like to thank the City Council for this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a resident of the Creekside neighborhood of Solvang. I've just got a couple of what seem like minor points, but it goes to the issue of the inclusiveness and the, in my view, partial incompleteness of the work that's being done here in the planning. The plan that we've seen ignores some clearly stated goals for Valley government's handling of bicycle trails. The Santa Barbara County Association of Governments Regional Active Transportation Plan acknowledges the interests of both bicyclists, pedestrians, and horse riders, and goes on, and I quote, "Where appropriate, Class 1 bikeways should offer a side path for the equestrian community." And this goal is also found in the Santa Ynez Valley Community Plan. And this also, by the way, the community plan recommends limiting bridges over creeks where possible to preserve wildlife habitat. And before us, we have a plan with 2 bridges. And I guess the question is, do these bridges have any features that make them even at all acceptable for horse riders? I'm thinking not, but maybe I'm wrong. We do see regular horsemen on and horsewomen on the 246 bike plan, but their needs haven't been taken into account for this. The other thing that I immediately noticed when I finally did get a copy of Plan 3A-5 was the alignment of the bridge with Rebel Avenue. And here's what I'm thinking. This now, going through here and over to here and then down to Viborg, that's an implicit bypass of that rather sticky intersection at Alamo Pintado and 246. It's something that bicycle riders, and I'm a casual bicycle rider, are always looking for, a way to avoid, because I'm not a heavy-duty rider. I don't ride all the time. I'm not a pro-style rider. I don't like riding in traffic. I like to have a bike path. I like to have that. And so I don't want to go to that intersection. I want to find a way to kind of get around it. And now we've built one right there. But unlike the previous Plan 2, where that was marked on the street by the arrows, it's not marked here. But it's certainly makes the east-west connection from Santa Ynez to Solvang and points west quite a bit more acceptable for non-heavy-duty bike riders. And I think you're going to see in that case a lot of people thinking about this, and they're going to look, I think we'll see on our streets in Creekside, for instance, additional weekend bike tour people.
All right, thank you. Time's up on that. Thank you, Richard. Next up, Nick. And after Nick, we have Colleen Smith.
My name is Nick DeCroce, and I am a resident of Solvang and of Holly Lane in Creekside. While I am in favor and support the bicycle clubs and their activities, I am definitely opposed, as well as many of my neighbors in Creekside, on any path or alignment that would put traffic into Creekside on any of the streets. On May 30th, we had a meeting, and there was an informal vote taken at that meeting, and the informal vote overwhelmingly was in favor of paths that skirted Creekside, similar to the way Alternative 5 does now. So I am surprised to see a bridge 3A, which will put some traffic into Solvang, and it sounds as though the city council was not listening to that vote very well. We would appreciate it if you do that. I urge you to select an alternative, such as Alternative 5, for the same reasons as the previous speakers who have been up here most recently. And I urge you also to remember that we will also remember the next election when it comes up. If you don't, skip Creekside for a bike path. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen Smith, and then Heidi Nagard. Haggard.
Hi, I'm Colleen Smith. I'm a registered voter and resident of Solvang. I'm a 24-year resident of Creekside Drive. I support alignment number 5. I oppose the 3A bridge over Alamo Potato Creek into the Creekside neighborhood. The number 5 path and the coming 2023 path or redo of the 246 bridge with bike lanes by Caltrans will serve the vast majority of Solvang residents, neighboring communities, and visitors. Path users, including Creekside residents, can easily access the number 5 path in a few minutes via Alamo Potato Road North to Coyote Creek Road to travel east. The 3A bridge adds little value to the path users, but fundamentally changes our quiet, closed, 40-year-old neighborhood. Residents of Creekside do not want to change our neighborhood for the sake of a 10-minute bike ride. The Alta Technical Memo Desirability Evaluation rates the bike user's experience for a short bike ride, but fails to consider the desirability by residents who will live with the path 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We do not have a well-oiled political advocacy organization. We only have you, city council members, and you need to feel your responsibility to represent us. A few of us Creekside neighbors walked our neighborhood last Saturday to tell our neighbors about this meeting and the 3A bridge. 100% of the people I spoke with are opposed to the 3A bridge. Not one person I spoke with supported the 3A bridge. 100% of the people I spoke with signed a statement opposing the 3A bridge. I have here for you, at last count, 53 signatures of Creekside residents that oppose the 3A bridge. My educated guess is that most of them are Solvang registered voters. We need you to do the job of representing us and remove the 3A bridge from the grant application. And I'd like to give you these for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi? And after Heidi, we have Bront Reynolds.
Hi, I'm Heidi Nedegard. I was born and raised in this lovely, beautiful valley. I'm actually 5th generation San Ynez Valley resident, 3rd Solvang. And I reside in the Creekside neighborhood, which I feel very fortunate to do so. I'm on the corner of Creekside Drive and Rebuild. I've lived at my residence just under 2 years. It'll be 2 years in October. And I had no knowledge of the proposed bike path through my neighborhood at the time of purchasing. My choice probably would have been different had I known. I'm very active in this community. I have been my entire life, but and my hope is that you'll hear my fellow neighbors and what we have to say. During this process, I've seen a lot of interesting things happen. It's kind of been eye-opening for me. Council members on the news promoting a bike path through my neighborhood, and other things, such as riding through parades with some of our other members of the community, which in my opinion was a little bit of a conflict of interest. My hope is that you'll hear the residents of Creekside and the city members and actually follow what their opinion is. As a public official, you have an absolute obligation to put the public's interest, which in this case is the residents in the city of Solvang, before your own direct or personal interests. Public officials have the duty to represent all of their constituents, again, this being the city of Solvang residents. The public fiduciary cannot favor those of his or her own party over other constituents. As a Creekside resident, I don't feel like I've been heard or that we have been heard by Alta or the council. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be here. I hope that the council members will take this opportunity to hear from us and make the right decision. As I mentioned, you have an obligation and duty to do so. The objective of the Sunny Fields Spur Trail was to extend the current bike path in order to connect with Sunny Fields. That was what we started with at the beginning. And Alignment 5 does just that. And it's the least expensive way without invading our neighborhood. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you. Brown Reynolds. And then after Brown, we have Paul Company.
First of all, I'd like to thank the City Council for involving your constituents in this very weighty decision. I know it's not easy. And we appreciate that very much, both those who have bike interests and also the residents of the Creekside area. Greatly appreciated. My name is Bronny Reynolds, and I live with my wife, Lila Moore, at 2138 Creekside Drive. We purchased our current home last July, and we've had the pleasure of our first year in this incredible place, and making friends and kind of assimilating into the culture of Solvang, which is a wonderful place. This is the third meeting that we've attended on this particular issue. In the prior two meetings, there have been those who are proponents of the bike trail who have mentioned that there is some kind of study out there that shows that property values are enhanced by bike paths that run through the neighborhood. The single most attractive attribute when we were deciding on this final move of our life was the tranquil neighborhood and the nature of Creekside. It's got its broad avenues and its quiet, peaceful setting and a minimum of traffic activity. And consideration of a major bike lane by the city was not disclosed to us when we bought our home, and had that been the case, I'm not sure we would have moved forward with it. And that must speak somewhat to the property values that are there. And when we talk about property values, we're talking about the property, how valuable we are, how we feel it is. And right now I feel I've got $1 million property. Having a bike path come through my neighborhood on Creekside, that would change for me to the point where we would have to consider perhaps looking someplace else. I'm not here to refute the previous research or findings that might be out there, but simple logic and common sense tells us that the value of our home and the others in the neighborhood aren't going to be enhanced by the installation of a bike lane. I appeal to the board to represent the interest of, at least on Creekside Drive, the 25 homeowners and probably up to around 75 to 100 residents that live in those homes. And don't impose such a significant change in our community. We really would appreciate that you find an alternative that is the least impactful, and it just seems like that alternative 5 really sounds like it really makes some sense. And appreciate again the work that you people do. Thank you.
Thanks, Bronny. All right, next up we have Paul Company, and then Christy White.
Thank you, Council, for letting me address you today. I am a resident of Creekside for 12 years, my wife and I. And I love bike riding. I bike ride all the time. I go to Sunny Fields every day with my dog. Love the neighborhood. And I get 5, I get 1, I get 4, I get all of them except 3 makes no sense to me. Other than the only thing I hear on the facts backing that up is we prefer riding through a neighborhood, right? But if you're coming from Solvang and you're riding your bike, you take Alamo Pintado. If you're coming from Santa Ynez, you take 5. Why would you go to 3? If you're coming from Solvang, why would you pass 5 and go to 3? If you're coming from Solvang, why would you pass 1 and go to 3? It's like right in the middle. It makes the path longer. So if you're coming from Santa Ynez, it's a longer ride to go through 3A. If you're coming from Solvang, it's a longer ride going through to 3A. So it's longer, it's the most expensive, and it's the least safe. Look at Holly. Count the number of houses on each side of the Holly. There's 13 on each side. That's 26 driveways. There's cars parked on both sides. we're talking at least 35 different opportunities for an accident. Every time a car pulls off, it may hit a bike. Every time a car pulls out of its driveway. And I'm not saying 2 cars per driveway, because that would make it, what, 50 opportunities? It's just less safe. More cars are driving through Holly. You're going to be intersecting bike traffic with car traffic. Less safe, right? Allo Potato, option 1, you only have entrances onto it through 3 streets. Only 3 opportunities versus your 50 opportunities for accidents. Less safe. Also shorter, right? 5, look at 5. Do you see any houses, clusters of houses that people are bike riding through 5? None, look at that. It's like open, open nothing. The only accident that's going to happen there is someone falls off their bike. They're not going to probably get hit by a car, because how many cars are on there, right? So shorter, less expensive. And is 5 and 3A together now? Are you voting to do both, or are you voting for 5 or 3? I need clarification on that, because I don't understand that. Is this like a dual thing? You guys are going to say 5 and 3A are going to go as one like vote? Or is it 3A and 5? Are those 2 separate things?
So just to answer your question, all alignments are up for grabs tonight.
Okay, so 1 through 6.
So a hybrid is a new one, whereas before we only had the prior 6
Gotcha.
alignments.
Okay, so all the other ones are still, you guys may vote for one of the other ones too, the 2 or the 1 or the 4.
We could even stop the whole project today.
Okay.
That's
now,
correct.
Is there a plan for doing 2? Like, can you do 5 and 3A? Is that being considered? Or
I think
are you just voting
the
for
time's
1?
up. I don't want to engage too much, but I just
Okay.
want to answer that question.
Okay, so just summary, shorter paths, more safe, less expensive. You can use that extra money to build sidewalks for the school.
Thank you. Christy? Hi.
Thank you all for having me. Oh, am I done? Thank you. Oh, that's all you get. Funny, I'm talking about please hear me. Okay, I thank you for having me. I'm a registered voter. I live in Creekside. I'm one of the overall majority Creekside residents who, I want that thing back on. I want to show it. Who have repeatedly told Matt and the consultants in the Bike Coalition that we want just number 5. 3 and 3A, the preferred hybrid, we do not want those, and there are specific reasons why we don't want it. From the beginning in December, I actually wrote you a nice little packet. I'm good for packets. I'm an educator. We do packets. Number 1, the main concern is safety. Safety first. That's what I tell my kids. That's what I've told my kids and what I believe in. Safety first. We want it built with fiscal responsibility, and we want it environmentally safe. Those 3 things, that's all we should be focusing on. I went to the meetings in May and June, but I wasn't at the little meeting in the backyard across the street from me where this little hybrid came about. My main concern with rebuild, and well, it's here, but you know, you can get to it from all over, is once again, my husband brought it up, but look at all those driveways. Look at all those driveways. And we're not used to, I am not good with the pointer, but if you look at all the people backing up, and if you look at all the cars that are parked there, if you went down to those in the morning when the kids are leaving school and the people are going to work and everyone's kind of half asleep, you know that an accident's going to happen. I believe that this is foreseeable liability. That you know, any reasonable person should know someone's going to back up and hit somebody someday. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's going to happen. And if we care about our kids going to high school, which is what this is supposed to be for, then we should know someone's going to get hurt and someone might get injured. I am so passionate about this because I've devoted my life for kids, for high school kids, for junior high kids, because I care about our future. And I just don't think that this is a wise decision for safety. Because when someone gets hurt, and let's say they're not gravely injured, but let's say they are. Let's say they do have injuries where they become a paraplegic, God forbid. Who is going to pay for that? Obviously the person that's hurt for the rest of their life. Obviously the person that lives in that house. Obviously the person who has big pockets, Solvang City. What about the people you knowingly know it's a foreseeable liability? You can see that all those people backing up, and we can't turn around. You know, there are a couple of people like Steve Berg, who is that person that has the 2 easements. He can back around in his driveway. I can't. I've almost hit people because I have a corner driveway, and it's hard. I mean, I have to go really, really slow, and I still have bike people coming around that drive really fast. So those are the 3 things I really, really want you to focus on, because I want a bike path. I want it for all of us, and I don't want to hurt anybody. So please, and I gave you a packet because I knew I wouldn't get through all of it.
Thank you. Next up is Stanley Peternell. And after Stanley, we have Gary Hempel.
My name is Stanley Peternell. I've lived in Creekside Tract now since 1982, and I'm a registered voter. First, I would like to thank our mayor and the council members for their excellent service to our community. I'm an old retired motocross racer and now an occasional beach bike rider when my knees will allow me. I think the bike trails are a good thing, and I encourage the fine effort to continue to develop them. No problem with that. And I'm going to touch on some safety issues as another person just did. My issue with the proposed Sunnyfields Spur Trail is safety of the riders and the residents. Although the plan location has not been fully decided, it seems the bike traffic will eventually be routed through some or all of the streets of the residential area of Creekside Tract. Here are a few of my safety concerns, especially since there will be young children using this bike trail. The cyclists will most likely be traveling down the middle of the street due to the heavy parking we have now on Creekside. Occasionally in groups, they ride side by side, 3 or 4 abreast. They get aggressive and they go kind of fast. We've all seen that. I don't have a problem with it, but not on a Creekside street. It's not going to work. You have too many cars. We put our trash out once a week, and the mailboxes are almost on the street. And actually, there's a point I'm going to cover here about mailboxes, where it specifically states by the San Ynez Valley Community Plan that if mailboxes could be an issue, you can't do this. Granted, a driver needs to be aware of traffic and pedestrians when we're backing out of our driveways. But some of the competitive riders, when they come through at high speeds, they're going to be hard to see. I have trouble backing out of the driveway now, and there's just so much traffic that we didn't have years ago that it's tough to back up even when there aren't any cars coming, especially for senior citizens, and we have many in our Creekside. Some that don't have the hearing or vision they did 40 years ago. When traveling east or west on Creekside Drive, you have to cross Colding.
Mr. Peter, no, the time's up on the comment there.
Time's up?
Time's up on the comment.
I went 2.5 to 3 minutes already?
Yeah.
You kidding me? All right. Well, no 3A.
Thank you. Next up is Gary Hempel.
Good evening, council members. I'm a registered voter and I live in Creekside on Colding Avenue. I've lived in that community for over 36 years. My wife and I bought there for a specific type of living that Creekside presents to its residents. It is a safe, peaceful, and enclosed community, which has already been covered before. I have attended or listened to meetings regarding the proposed bicycle path, either to or through the Creekside community. I have not heard any praise from the Creekside community for any of these proposals other than the 5. And the widening of the new bridge on 246. These are all valid concerns that they have, every single one of them. Why then, I'm really astonished. I really am. Why then does the council continue to insist and try and push this through the Creekside community? Why? Why does the council continue to alienate the residents and voters of the Creekside community? Why do you continue to support other people who do not live in the city rather than their constituents who have voted you in? This final draft, even tonight, that was shown is not really clear. It doesn't show the bike lanes or anything, so it's a poor job as far as what I'm seeing here. This leads me to the question, what could be the reason why the council is driving this through? Could one or more of the council members have their own agenda, which is more important than those who elected them? I don't know. Could they be trying to promote the bike path for their own gain? I don't know. If so, it's highly unethical, and I believe it's illegal. They are to serve their constituents, people that voted them in, first. If any council has a conflict of interest, they should immediately step down. I am for bike paths, widening the new bridge, perhaps going forth and trying to get that expedited over by Nielsen's or the 5.
Thank you. Thanks. Next up is Sheila Benedict.
Can you put that map back up, please? Oh, thank you. I thought it went out, but my eyesight isn't going. Thank you, council people, for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm not going to discuss, I live on Creekside Drive, but everybody's discussed everything about the safety issues and the problems, and yes, I oppose it, but I come to you from a different point of view. Back in 2003, 2004, there was a study made by the high school through the EAST program in the science history department called, and EAST stands for Environmental and Spatial Technologies. And the study they did was of the aqueducts and the dams flowing beneath Alamo Pintado and all the way to the Mission, some of it in near where the Nielsen Shopping Center is. And because of that and reading the community plan, I contacted the archaeologist that worked on that. I have a copy of the high school program with me that I will take back to the Mission. And those of you that know me long enough know that I've been the archivist and was the administrator there at the time that this study went on. And I am telling you, if you're putting those bridges in, you need an archaeological study before you can do any of that type of thing, because there is an awful lot of underground aqueducts and dams, and you could be in violation, not to mention the wildlife area there off of Rebuild, I'm sorry. And in speaking to Dr. Hoover, he said there's a really good chance you need to get an archaeological study, and this whole program should come to a halt until you do the study and make sure that there is nothing archaeological that would be damaged by any of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jim Richardson.
I'm Jim Richardson. I'll give you my standard thing that I say. I am the mayor of the city of Solvang. I'm speaking here as a private citizen, not as a member of the city council. I have serious questions about the accuracy of the study. The draft study showed pricing and costs for these 6 alignments, and the final draft came with serious increases in pricing, to the effect of a 67% increase in one area, 43% increase in another area, yet those 2 studies didn't show any increases in the costs of the bridges. The bridges came in at $1 million for 3A and $500,000 for 5. I think that there's some disconnect in there because of that. I want you to know that I do support 5, and I want you to understand that 3A is a de facto 2. Now, if the study indicated that 2 needed 4-way stops on Alamo Pintado, why doesn't 3A require those 4-way stops on Alamo Pintado? Because it is a de facto 2. So I want you to understand that there are those kinds of questions. Now, Karen used to live in Creekside. The other 2 of you haven't, and so I want you to understand the imposition that this bike path is going to have. I want you to walk in the shoes of the folks that live there. And I have a corollary or an analogy that fits this description. You understand that several of the people that are proponents don't live in Creekside. Several don't even live in the city. So because of that, I can suggest that there's a shop in town that faces Mission Drive. It also has a back entrance to a parking lot. If by some strange accident or something that the government has decided that the safest way to go between Mission Drive and that parking lot is through a bicycle shop. I think that the person in the bicycle shop would be inconvenienced, to say the least. Their livelihood would be disrupted, although the people would straggle through. Some might even stop and buy goods. Others may not. But and then there would be strollers walking through that shop. There's also something to consider is our tourists. They may decide to empty buses at the parking lot and then all go through that shop. But, you know, it doesn't matter because the value of the property will be increased because of the amount of tourists that's through there. I want you to understand how serious these folks behind me are about the invasion of 3A into the Creekside neighborhood. We agree, I think, to a person that bicycle path would be necessary to get over to the park, and alignment 5 is the answer. It's the cheapest answer. It's was pointed out earlier that bridge to nowhere is 1/3 of the cost of the comping.
We got it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we have Charlene Asmussen. Charlene? No, Charlene. Rika Kelly?
My name is Rick Kelly, and I live on Creekside Drive. There really isn't a Rika Kelly, is there?
Oh, no, I can't. Look like Zaka or...
I got a hurt arm.
Zaka.
All right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to voice my concerns about the proposed Sunnyfield Spur. While I see the value in improving bike paths in our community, I am not in favor of having one routed through the Creekside neighborhood. We purchased our home near the creek 22 years ago, in part because of the beauty of the neighborhood's natural creekside setting and also because of the safety provided by the enclosed design of the neighborhood. The well that is being drilled near the corner of Ribbold and Colding is already taking away from the natural beauty and may negatively impact our home values. If bike access is routed through our neighborhood, both the creekside setting and our enclosed safety will be lessened, which may further impact home values. As the Well 22 project has already begun, we request that should you choose to move forward with the Sunnyfield Spur, you do so in a way that does not run through or directly next to the Creekside neighborhood so that we can protect our neighborhood's character and home values. Thank you.
Thank you. And last is Ed France. Is Ed here?
He stepped out for a second.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll bring it back to council.
May I speak?
Sure. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Robert Allen Ramirez, fourth generation Irish, sixth generation Spaniard. Even though I do not agree with this bike path going through Creekside, I find it very difficult for the people of Creekside to be making statements politically toward city council members as they are registered voters. You say you lived here 30 years. I lived here 53 of my 56 years. I don't recall a single resident in Creekside asking the farmers who built this town and this valley for your permission to live in that field. I hunted it for a long time. My family members did, 3 generations back. So relax. Bicycling paths are going to happen. I don't agree with them. There's a lot of things I have against it as well. Personally, you have a beef. But bringing politics into this, saying I'm a registered voter and you should be paying attention to it, is a problem. Jim, you're a conflict of interest. You never, ever should bring a city council's name to the board when you're making a statement. Make it personal, private, but you don't use their name because they live there at one time. That's a conflict of interest. I am agreeing with you. No bike path should go through a town center like that, a neighborhood. It is a safety problem. Remember that, people. You're the guest, as well as I am, to this land. Keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed France, want to give one more shot? All right.
Chair Zimmerman, members of council, my name is Ed France. I am from the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition, a countywide organization that represents folks in the San Ynez Valley. I'm very proud of the San Ynez Valley SPOT, and the folks have come out. I'm very proud of the Solvang community. I believe I've been here for every public meeting on this item, and it's been great to see, because the reality was there are a few projects that haven't been, on the front burner. And the reason that we're here today is because back in the 70s, when the 246 bike route to San Ynez High School was built, it was not completed. And I kind of want to challenge everyone here. Based on my experience in other communities, if this path was in the 70s, we would be having a very different discussion. If the item was before us now to remove, it would be very different, because we would have generations of children who would have made connections either with their family riding on the weekends or perhaps even riding to school. And that's something that we would hold dear. And I think the reality is we are looking to the future, and we're looking to build something for the next generation. I'm not here to advocate for any specific alignment, but it is critical when we think of the lack of safe connections, not to come up with every potential hazard, either real or imagined. But what is absolutely visceral right now is if you're trying to connect on Mission Road, and let's say you're trying to connect to the bike path, whether or not on the new bridge on 246 is going to have bike lanes, how are you going to cross the state highway to get into the path? And that's what this connection will help address. Now, I just want to speak to the process as a visitor and as a guest here. I'm really proud of you residents of Creekside, of Solvang, of the San Ynez Valley, because this has been quite a process and emotions have run high, because this is your life, this is your everyday. And bicycling is one really important part that is something new. And this is really a birthing of something new, and that's a painful process. Now, I will say that seeing actual alignments that make sense, and I would argue that everything that we're seeing has good rationale. But I firmly believe in the ability of this community to choose something that future residents, children to be, are going to build something that they are going to hold dear, and that this community is going to hold dear 40 years into the future. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Matt, you have something to say?
Would you like me to respond to some of the comments and provide some information that might be helpful?
There were no speaker slips when I came in.
Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak that hasn't had a chance? Okay.
And I'll try and be really quick. Chip Wolbrandt. I have a Solvang zip code. I'm not a registered voter in the city, though, so I'm not going to threaten you with that. My family did live at the Mission in the 1840s, so I do have some history here. I've been listening, and with all respect to the immediate neighbors, it sounded like you're talking about a toxic waste dump, or the bullet train, or something really awful. And I think it's time to kind of step back and remember, you're talking about a path, talking about something that generally is a good thing. I wish it had been put in the 70s. I wish it had been put in the 1840s. I wish there were many more paths throughout the valley. I agree with one of the speakers who seemed opposed but mentioned that you should include opportunities for equestrian use of this path. I very much agree with that. I hope you do. And I'll note my understanding of where you are in this process is you are identifying alternatives to move forward then with a study. So all these awful things that the neighbors are concerned about, the concern that there needs to be an archaeologist, there needs to be an analysis of the floodway, all those things are going to happen. They are all required as future steps in this process. And so I'm just going to urge you all on behalf of my 4 kids who live here in the valley, my family, what I expect to be future generations here, please have the vision to move forward, do the right thing, do the next steps of studies, and this seems like a pretty logical choice of paths, and one that has taken care of at least some of the controversy we're facing before. Thank you.
Thank you. And who else was it in the back there? Yep, come on up.
Hello, council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Corey Evans. I'm a member of the San Ynez Valley Spoke, and I wanted to thank all the residents of Creekside for being here as well. This is an important topic, and I think this is really a philosophical quest as well, because really it's not about today. It's not about the impact directly on the Creekside residents today. It's about the future. It's about our children in the future. And I think, yes, Creekside is part of the community of Solvang, but it's a small part of the community, and the Solvang community is very large, and this is for everybody. This is for the residents of Creekside. This is for the residents of Solvang. This is about connecting communities, and that's really been our vision this entire time, is about connecting these communities. And as there are some controversial, comments that have come up about the bridges, but really the goal of this whole process is to connect these communities and allow safe access for both children. And I think I heard somebody talking about that there's a lot of baby strollers and people walking along the streets in Creekside. Well, now they can walk to Sunny Fields. They can walk to the high school. So it broadens that process. So I really encourage the council to kind of look at the long-term vision and how this can positively impact the entire community of Solvang in the San Ynez Valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. Once again, Mike Hecker, San Ynez Valley Spoke. Hey, this is a big picture pitch that I'm going to toss at you and toss to all of you, okay? The Sunny Fields Creekside Spur is only a small piece. I'm speaking to the council, Mr. Mayor. But you don't go crosstalk on me, please, sir.
Excuse me, Neil. Neil is running the meeting, Jim.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
The Sunny Fields Creekside Spur is only a small piece of a movement to reshape the San Ynez Valley into a more connected, sustainable, and healthier community. There are many Valley residents and visitors who wish to see over the next 10, 15, 20 years something special built here. When completed, the San Ynez Valley Trail Network will positively change our community, enhancing everyone's quality of life, even for those who never go for a walk, never go for a ride on a horse, or never pedal a bike. The Sunny Fields Creekside Spur is not the first piece of this puzzle. Previous transportation and recreational safety improvements have recently been implemented in Buellton and other parts of the valley. The vision of the San Ynez Valley Trail Network is not just to stop at the building of the Sunny Fields Creekside Spur, but to continue this forward thinking and build the Class 1 San Ynez River Trail between Refugio Road and Riverview Park in Buellton, and connecting every major street in between with Class 2 bike lanes. Sorry, guys. To build the Mission Trail, a Class 1 connector path from the western end of this Alamo Pintado path under Highway 246, when Caltrans replaces the current 246 bridge in 2023, but I've been told it could be 2028, behind Union Bank, through the State Park, up to Lot 72, connecting to Alisal Road, to replace parking on Mission Drive with Class 2 bike lanes, adding sharrows to the traffic lanes leading to every Valley Elementary School, build Class 2 bike lanes on Baseline Avenue, Edison Street, and South Refugio, convert the century-old Pacific Coast Narrow Gauge Railroad bed outside of Los Olivos to a Class 1 multi-use path that would be used not only by bicycle riders but equestrians as well. So, some envision this path going all the way down 154, 246 to San Ynez, and then north to Los Alamos. There you go. We've now connected every community in the San Ynez Valley, most of the parks, all of the elementary schools, the high school, the soon-to-be-built aquatic center, the YMCA, and most importantly, over this 20-year period, we will have connected neighborhoods, all through proper planning and investing in future bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. This is an investment that probably should have started 30 years ago. It's not too late now. After all, this isn't as much about who's lived here in the past, of which I'm a fourth-generation San Ynez Valley resident, and I've resided in Solvang 3 times over my 50 years. Thank you. As it is about those who will live here in the future. When this network is complete, we will have reshaped the entire San Ynez Valley into a true bicycling destination, a mecca, if you will. So tonight, I encourage you not to side with those fearful of change, but to side with those who wish to finally plan for the future and vote for our 3A and 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Yeah, we can go ahead with another comment. Yep.
You've heard a lot of arguments today, and what impresses me the most is that you have a room full of people who are not saying that they're against progress, they're just saying do it smart. Why would you pick a win-lose option when there's a win-win option in front of you? And despite all the great all the great speaking by these people that want to speak to the future or want everyone to think bigger, none of those people are the people whose kids, whose family, whose pets, whose life are the ones that are going to be impacted today, tomorrow, and every day that they live in the neighborhood. So it's great that you want to think big, but they're not the ones whose insurance rate is going to go up if there's an accident. They're not the ones that have to live with the complications. I encourage you, council, you have a win-win option in front of you. Take it.
Thank you. Yeah, go go ahead and introduce yourself. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Christy Hunt, Valley resident, San Ynez Valley Spoke. I just wanted to keep it a little bit honest, if possible. You know, if we're truly talking about safety, it seems fairly obvious that the current situation is the truly dangerous one. The kids going through Nielsen's parking lot into oncoming traffic, into the bike lane. If we're really concerned about a kid getting hit by a car, that's the bad accident, not the car rolling at 1 mile an hour down a driveway that a bicycle can see. So there's that fact. Also, you know, I was here at the meeting when 3 and 5 were identified, and it's just simply not true that everyone favored Route 1, as was said earlier. So there's just a lot of like fear-based comments and a lot of untruths being said. So I just would ask that you really do think about future generations. The goal is to connect it to a neighborhood. If there's no connection to the neighborhood, kids aren't going to use it, and we won't have accomplished anything. If you still have to go around to the Caltrans bridge, families aren't going to let their kids do that. If you still have to take Alamo Pintado and cross the cross traffic on 5, that's going to rule it out for a lot of children. So really, we're not going to accomplish anything unless we can connect it to the Creekside neighborhood, which is why we're here. So I would just urge you to shake off some of the untruths and stay focused on the goal, which is to connect it to the Creekside neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you. Sure.
Council, my name is Russell Parlato. I'm a resident of Creekside Drive. I have 4 children. I do not want 3A. 5 is acceptable. My children, I would not let them use it. I don't want the people in the neighborhood. We have a nice quiet neighborhood. It's very contained. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right. Bring it back to the council, and we'll discuss and then go from there.
So I believe, Matt, did you have some things that you wanted to address with regard to some of the questions?
Yeah, I just thought it would be helpful for the city council. Again, I'm not trying to persuade the city council one way or the other. You know, the staff did not originally come up with this plan, but I think it will be very helpful to clarify a few things and help you in your decision-making process. So, for starters, Mr. Butler brought up some very valid points about the floodplain and the concerns with that. However, just to clarify, FEMA will not even look at anything until an engineer is hired, extensive hydraulic modeling and analysis is done, modeling of the flows in the creek, modeling of the impact of abutments of a bridge, bicycle bridge, and how that would affect the floodplain. And all that would have to be done before a package could be submitted to FEMA to analyze, to evaluate anything. And so obviously the consultant would be, you know, if this were to go forward, the consultant would be designing the bridge abutments to have minimal impact to the floodplain or somehow otherwise mitigate that. So it is true we'd have to submit some documents to FEMA, but that's not the first thing you do. You gotta fund the project, hire a consultant, go through the CEQA process, do the analysis. Another person mentioned about an archaeological study. So of course, that is one of the key things that's always done. All the major projects that the city's done in the last 7 years since I've been here, when we went through the CEQA process, an archaeologist was hired as part of the consulting team doing the environmental work, and an archaeological study was performed. So that is absolutely correct. That would have to be done, but that would be for any major project. The other thing I was going to mention is there seems to be some confusion regarding 3A. And so with that portion of this proposed alternative, the street parking would not be affected in any way. And bicycles would share the road like they do most places in the country. And there would be no bike lanes with 3A. the path would end at the street with the little ramp down, access ramp down, and bicyclists and pedestrians would share the road, just like was commented. Women in strollers are out in the road, so that's how that would work. There are no bike lanes proposed with 3A. Also, I wanted to clarify, the ATP program is really defies conventional wisdom. It really does not follow conventional logic. And what I mean is the state has goals of really, and we may not agree with them, and we may consider them political or whatever, but the state has goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing climate change, improving health, and getting people more active. And so the active transportation program is looking for big, bold projects. And honestly, having 3A in there, and it was mentioned by several people, the neighborhood connection, whether you prefer to have it or not, that's up to you, but that neighborhood connection is vital for an ATP application, and it significantly strengthens the application. The state wants to see, as was mentioned, that the maximum number of people can access all of this, and students and children. So it will weaken the application if 3A is removed, yeah. So that neighborhood connection is really important as far as the active transportation program is concerned. And also, what was mentioned was the cost of the second bridge. Well, again, the ATP program, it really kind of defies conventional wisdom. The more bold and expensive you make a project, if you have all those elements that the state's looking for, it doesn't matter how much it costs. I mean, the large projects, they have projects $100 million. I'm not kidding. If we added a third bridge somewhere, that might even strengthen that provided some connectivity.
Just dropped a bomb on us. This whole thing, all of a sudden, it's much better. Why didn't you tell us this 2 weeks ago?
So yeah, you can laugh and make fun or whatever. That's fine. There's always hecklers. But anyway, that's the fact of it. I didn't come up with the ATP program. I don't review and evaluate the applications, but we've seen over and over again the projects that have been successful and gotten funding. If you don't believe me, you can talk to the folks in Santa Barbara. What they did to get funding is they expanded and doubled the size of their projects, included all this additional stuff, and then submitted it in and got funding. They doubled the size of their projects and got funding. So anyway, so just want to make sure that's clear. So whatever you decide is fine, but that wanted to try to address some of the comments and questions. So
thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
I do have a number of issues that I would like to address where I feel that the public has been in receipt of misinformation or has been misinformed. This council has not pushed 3A. This is a study that was brought to us. So those of you out there that have been saying that we are pushing for a bike path to go through the Creekside neighborhood, this is not the case. These are just possibilities that have been presented to us through a consulting group that we have hired. So that's the first thing that I'd like to clear up. And as my fellow councilman Ryan Toussaint said, all of this is on the table right now, and we're trying to make the best choice for this community because the bike paths will happen. The second thing that I would like to clear up is that I do not believe that in any television interview by any council member that any of us specifically said we wanted a bike path to go through the Creekside neighborhood. We were promoting better transportation and better bicycle path options in general. So I really think that's important to clear that up. The third thing that I'd like to say is thank you all for your input. Heard you loud and clear on how you feel about this. This is a very tedious process for us. We have put a lot of thought into it, and I am sure that my fellow council members here will have more input on this as we make a decision. Thank you.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is direction to staff. And at first glance, I mean, I don't think it's a strong enough argument to say that 3A should be included because of some type of government funding. There's no like stable ground for that. It would be for the best for the community and for the public in general. And if we eliminate it, it reduces the cost on us. But if we're looking at this and we're just looking to put it into the grant application, well, no, I guess that wouldn't work, because then if we get the grant, to be based on doing that work. So, yeah, I don't see. That's a tough one. That is a tough situation. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments on that? Like a little more input or something? Because we may not get the funding, right? Or the grant, so it doesn't get done. But if we do get the grant, we're going to do the work. And there's a lot of people that do not want this in their neighborhood. So.
Yeah, if I could say, you could definitely direct the staff to proceed and have the consultant just include alignment 5. I'm just wanting to be clear that
I'm all about alignment 5. But I'd like to hear a little more argument for the 3A other than some potential grant of some kind.
Well, I can't speak specifically for our consultant, but I think as was mentioned, the idea is looking towards the future. It is trying to maximize connectivity, and they obviously know we're pursuing a grant application, and so they're trying to recommend this hybrid project that basically it's kind of like two paths in one, so to speak. So that's their recommendation, but certainly it's your decision, and you've heard the community members, and you could direct staff to proceed with just
Sure,
line 5.
I'd also like the public to understand that the improvement for the bridge over on 246 by Nielsen's, I mean, you're looking at possibly 8 to 10 years down the road for this, and that's not an option for us. I mean, it will be in 8 to 10 years, but it's not a fix for what's happening now. And I believe that the 3A came along not only just for the grant funding possibilities, but just, as a connection to a family neighborhood. Perhaps our consultants did not fully understand the number of objections that they would have to presenting this, but we're hearing that at this point. So this is a difficult thing to decide at this point.
It was my understanding that 3A came out of basically another option besides 3, which truly connects straight over and then runs all the way up the right side of Creekside here, and then connects in on Coyote Creek. So that's my understanding of where that came from. Is that correct? Yep. Okay.
It came from a backyard meeting after a meeting here. Or did it come from
Thank you.
It did not come from the council.
You don't need to respond.
It came from a backyard meeting across from my house over at Steve Burke's house.
Okay, so let's move on with this.
Neil,
yeah.
can you take another speaker?
Sorry, no. I got to be disciplined here. All right. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we table this and kind of look at some more options, because quite quite frankly, I wasn't prepared for the vehement rejection of these plans. Although 5 does look positive, and I really would like to see this done, maybe we haven't looked at all options yet. Maybe we haven't covered them all.
Or do we just move forward with 5 and just cancel out 3A and move forward?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I made the motion to table it, so
Oh.
you all can either reject that or...
You did make the motion to table?
I'll make a substitute motion to move forward with alignment number 5.
I'll second it.
You guys have me in a real bind.
Well, I think part of accelerating this was also we have a deadline for, so tabling it, I don't know, is really an option at this point.
Okay.
Councilmember Toussaint?
Yes.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Wait?
Yes.
Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, folks.
we're going to reconvene the meeting. Before we go into item 6, I have to recuse myself on this item, and I believe Ryan Toussaint also has to recuse himself. So the hammer will go to our Mayor Pro Tem Joni.
Okay, before we start, can somebody find Karen? Because we're not legal. I will let you do that. While we're waiting for Karen, I just want to remind everybody that it's fair. And seeing Heidi sitting over there, I remember all the great times we used to have up there. Oh, oh, good, good. It's well worth the admission, and it's well worth just congratulating all the kids that have worked so hard all year long with their animals. And then the look in their eyes when they realize that that animal's not going home with them, it's going to market. Okay, let's get going here. Lisa, will you please read the item?
Item 6, agreement for contract services between the City of Solvang and the Solvang Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, I don't have speaker slips. Are there speaker slips someplace?
You're going to have one. Tracy Beard has asked to speak, but she's actually the recipient of the contract. So, but if I can give you a quick little staff report, then you can open up for public comment.
Please.
And it will be very brief. During your past budget discussions, the council expressed a desire to have a contract with the Solvang Chamber of Commerce, and staff has worked with the chamber to come up with a 2-year contract. It's very similar in the contract body of what we have with the SCVB, and so we modeled after that. The chamber will be tasked with promoting the city of Solvang as a business retail shopping destination and for business development. They will secure performance of business promotion and business attraction, retention, and assistance services. Staff is recommending approval of this contract, and in your budget, you did approve a 1-year funding of $250,000 for the Chamber of Commerce. Similar to what we do with the SCVB, we do not typically put the budget, a fixed budget in the annual contract, but you deal with it on their request in the annual budget process. So you have that draft contract before you. I think the chamber had a couple of minor edits to that, and Tracy may bring that up when she comes and talks. But so you have that before you. That's my staff report.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of staff report?
No questions.
Okay, Tracy, would you like to give your presentation, please?
I was just here to say thank you very much for the funding, and if anyone had any questions, all of this went towards our retail funding campaign and commercial campaign that we presented to you last week, and our business guide. So if anyone has any questions on where the funding is, I'm happy to answer those questions.
Okay, Brad did bring up that there may be some changes.
The changes are in the wording. It's a quarterly contract to be audited quarterly, and there's a few places where it says monthly still, but it was to be quarterly.
Yeah, she indicated there's a couple of typos. She was supposed to provide me with those, and we'll correct that for the final version, but I don't think it was any substantial change.
Okay, okay.
I think just for the general public that may not have been here during the grant process, we did give the chamber $250,000 already, so as she was thanking us for that, that is where that figure came from.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, are there public comment slips that I'm not aware of? Let me see. Is there anybody that did not fill out a slip that wishes to speak to this matter? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for action and comments. Neil?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I'll make the motion to approve the contract.
And I will second that.
Okay, you have any comments, Karen?
Nope.
Okay.
I'll second his motion to approve staff recommendation for the contract.
Okay, we don't
as
need-
amended.
Okay, do we need a roll call, or can we just do it by voice? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Opposed? We need voice? Okay.
No, because you already authorized the expenditure of the money. This is just the contract form.
Okay. Thank you. Please. I got the easy one. For the returning councilman, we did approve the contract.
Thank you much for that. Okay. On with item number 7. Will you read that, please?
Item 7, new special event, Solvang Grape Stomp.
Staff report.
Good evening, Solvang City Council members, Mayor. I feel like it's been a long night already, but here's a new event for you to consider. There's an application from Tracy Farhad, SCVB, for a new event for the 2018 special events calendar. It's a street festival of local wine culture. This will involve actual stomping of actual grapes on First Street. The reason that the First Street location is now in play is that there is going to be some construction and anticipated construction in the parking lot, the number 2 parking lot, which was the original proposed location. This is a replacement for the former Vintners Festival. There'll be several local food trucks that are proposed, including Checo's mobile pizza operation. A live band is to be proposed. This will make for a busy First Street location for special events because there is another one that's already scheduled, again, for the same reason that it isn't in lot number 2. Because it's under construction, there is going to be an Austin Healey car show on the 20th. So this will be your second event, second street closure for a special event in the month of October. We do have a long history of hosting special events. This is, the application was received in a timely fashion, and we are bringing it for you for your consideration, and any questions that you may have, I'll do my best to answer. And Ms. Farhad is here to give you more information too.
Are there any questions of staff report? Thank you, Holly. We have speaker slip, 1 speaker slip, Tracy Farhad.
Thank you. Tracy Farhad, Executive Director of the Solvang CVB. Holly gave a great report. Thank you very much. We're excited about this new event. It's actually kind of in lieu of the Vintners Harvest Festival, which is no longer taking place at the old Mission. We wanted to make sure there was still something going on at harvest time that can involve the community and also the wine industry. We're in collaboration with the Vintners so that they can actually cross-promote, and we already have some sponsorships lined up, including the VSYV, who would be our title sponsor as we launch this. And we're hoping for year 2, this will become an annual event, and we would like to, and year 2 will engage more of the rest of the community for a larger harvest type festival. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. I have no other speaker slip. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Joni?
Yes, I move the acceptance of this special event
I'll second.
permit.
I just had a question, actually, and I should have asked Holly early on. Is it Park Avenue is going to be blocked at First Street? What's going to happen to the Surrey business? Is he going to be forced to go back through parking lot 2?
That's a good question. I can research that and get back with you, but I'm not aware of any reroutings, but that would come to pass.
Because if it's just a sidewalk going to be open, I don't think that the Surreys would go down the sidewalk.
No.
He still operates the business during the First Street closures for all the special events. So they typically will go out the parking lot or out. Yeah.
That was what I was wondering, my question.
Yeah.
And
Rerouting.
has anybody vocalized any against it at all?
Not at this time.
Merchants? Good. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Jameson,
Yes.
Tucson?
Yes.
Waite?
Yes.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mayor Richardson?
Yes, and that passes with a 5-0. Congratulations, Stacy. Bring in the bucks. Okay, item 8.
Item 8, discussion and recommendation from MGT Consulting, City of Solvang Building Services Fee Study.
Staff report.
Good evening, City Council. Holly Owen, Planning Director, City of Solvang. This is a request to consider recommendations from MGT Consulting regarding the current fee structure for building services. We do have also Diane Christensen, who's attending tonight, who is really the representative and the heart of our building staff here in the City of Solvang. Building fees have not changed since 2005, since the inception of our building department. The cost recovery, although was keeping up with some of the expenses, has been recently lagging. And there is an indication in the staff report of the actual numbers that tie back to that. We've had in the proposed budgets for the last couple of years the request for a building fee services study, and until I came on board, that had not been brought forward. But at this time, it became apparent that there was a trend with not recovering our costs for providing these services to the larger business and contracting community. We did end up running an RFP and selecting MGT Consulting. Jeff Wakefield, our consultant, is here tonight. He will give a very brief PowerPoint presentation about his findings. But their task was to meet with various staff and to discuss and review the time and resources involved in the process of issuing permits. Typically, there is a 100% cost recovery model that they recommend at the start, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the model that we will all end up agreeing to follow should we go forward with this. There are ways in which cities can choose to subsidize models, certain permits, given that you might want some to incentivize compliance and coming to the city for a permit. For instance, to change out your hot water heater or similar tasks like that, or a re-roofing job. So on a case-by-case basis, there is at this presentation 100% cost recovery that is indicated, but that is not necessarily where we need to be. So what was done was not only interviews with the staff, with our building official, with our building inspector, but also just with an eye to what other jurisdictions are doing for fees, and that's also offered for your consideration. There were some updates to our fees. Some of the fees were outdated, and we made some changes and added some fees where that was necessary. Some of those were recommendations from internal staff. For instance, Diane Christensen recommended that we include trenchless sewer line installations. That's a new technology. Used to be that you had to dig a big trench, and then there was a lot of inspection hours, a lot more work done by the city to recover costs. So there's a new technology that we wanted to incorporate in our building permit tables. So we also are asking that we look at an escalator or a way to recover the cost of inflation over time, so we don't have to keep coming back to future councils 2 or 3 years later to incrementally recover the costs that are naturally going to occur with prices of salaries and materials and that kind of thing. So we're going to ask for either a CPI or some sort of index to be considered. We're also considering getting some recommendations for a general plan update fee, a minor fee that would a certain percentage of the building fee permit, so we could recover some of our costs for technology and also for a general plan update. So we'll be looking to the consultant just for some brief recommendations on that. Our intention is that we are giving this to you for your consideration tonight, and then upon your acceptance, we would drop back and do some scenarios where we look at our current building fee costs and what we charge for permitting, and then running some scenarios from what we currently charge versus what would be proposed. So we really have a good idea of what we would be changing or what the customers would be looking at. So with that, we've got our consultant here to answer questions, give a very brief presentation. He's got a PowerPoint here, and I'd like to have him come up if that's all right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council members. So as Holly just said, we have just a very brief PowerPoint to present the methodology, which is very straightforward, and then a few other considerations. I think if you go to slideshow. And then probably up. I think if you go up to the first slide. Page up. Okay. So the basics, and so probably go to the next slide. As Holly said, we're MGT of America, and our specialty is user fee analysis. We do more building fee studies within the state of California than any other firm. It's basically what we do. And we use industry standard methodologies in our analyses, and to be honest, it's very straightforward, very transparent, very intuitive. Simply, as Holly mentioned, we interview the subject matter experts. We work with them to develop time requirements for each fee category on the fee schedule. Based on those time estimates, based on the hourly rate of the various staff, that gives us the average cost for all the various fees on the fee schedule. We then compare those calculations to what you're currently charging, and that gives us the basis. That's really the crux of the study. It's really that straightforward. There's a few other things. At the same time, we're also looking at ways to sort of improve the structure itself. As Holly mentioned, a few fees were added. That it's been over a decade since the fees were looked at. So naturally, there's some fees that, because the code changed, the building code changes from time to time, there's a few fees that needed to be added. The solar fees in particular were not legal according to the state, so we got those right-sized. And we deleted a few fees that are a bit obsolete or didn't need to be on the schedule. So cleaning up the schedule, figuring out what the actual cost of all the various items on the fee schedule is, and then lastly, comparing all of that to what your neighbors charge. That's really the core of the study. Okay. Reiterating what I just said, so streamlining the fees, analyzing the cost to determine whether the costs are being recovered appropriately, and lastly, and very important, making sure that all the various fees are defensible as per state guidelines. The state guidelines in the government code says you can charge the estimated reasonable cost of providing a service, which means basically you can't knowingly make a profit when you're on your various inspection fees and your various plan check fees. This is the methodology. I've already described this, but essentially we're just taking on a fee-by-fee basis for every fee on the schedule. We're looking at, number one, the hourly rate of the staff who are in the trenches doing the inspections, doing the plan checks. Oftentimes those are contract staff. And then applying those hourly rates against the time required to do those inspections and to do those plan checks. The average time, not the best case scenario, not the worst case scenario, but the average time to do one of each unit of service. And I've given an example this is, as you can see, this is fee number 6 in the in your report, and fee number 6, the example that we pulled out. This is a $50,000 construction valuation project. So not market value. This is value of the construction, the value of the labor and materials of the project that's being built. $50,000 valuation. The example that the staff said was most common was a residential garage remodel. And as you can see at the top, the fee currently charged is $644. This is for the permit only, not the plan check. This is for the permit. $644 is the current fee based on the time requirement that we'll get into below. Based on that time requirement, the cost is coming out to $823. And the breakdown of the time is, so we identified 3 steps for this particular project. Number 1, I think it's a term used in the industry, drive and paper entry. This wasn't just one site visit, this was several site visits. So the drive time, we take one-way drive time, not 2 ways, but one-way drive time, and the paperwork, a total of 1.8 hours. The inspections once on site, total of 3.5 hours, and then re-inspections. Naturally, every inspection isn't approved, so sometimes you have to come back, or maybe the developer isn't there, so you have to come back. So there's always some re-inspection time. A total of basically 6.5 hours was the average time requirement for that project. So in this example, you can see that your current fee is slightly less than the actual cost. So again, as Holly mentioned, our standard recommendation is to adjust fees to full cost recovery. And that's a common philosophy across the country, actually, with a few exceptions. Again, water heaters is a classic example of a fee that perhaps you want to subsidize to try to prevent people from circumventing the system. But in general, we sort of default our recommendations to 100% cost recovery, which is the maximum allowable. And then obviously you guys can, if you give us direction, back off in certain areas if that's your desire. This may be a little difficult to see. This is in your report. This is the overall fiscal impact of all the various services. And I'll give one caveat that for the records for some of the they call it the subtrade permits, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing permits, the way that we're proposing those be charged is a little bit different than it's being charged right now. So you have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. And if anybody has questions on that, I can explain that better. But what we're seeing is that the overall cost is $104,000 for all the various permits and all the various plans that are being checked. The revenue that's being brought in right now is $68,000 for a 66% cost recovery. So what that means is that the general fund is subsidizing these services to the tune of $35,000. MGT's recommendation is, again, to adjust the fees to full cost recovery, which would be that $104,000, and which would result in an additional $35,000 of revenue. Again, the overall recommendation is to eliminate the subsidy by adjusting fees. And that's it. And I'll be here if there's any questions.
Are there any questions? Staff report. Thank you. I have one. Oh, go ahead, Roy.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of overall comments. Some, again, is just history. The statement that the maximum the law allows is 100% recovery is 100% accurate. The law doesn't require 100% recovery. tonight, you're not asked to establish fees, but you do have the opportunity to give feedback to your staff so they know what to bring back to you for such a decision. So it's all on the table as far as discussion goes. So you have the ability to discuss single items that you think we ought not to do maximum cost recovery on. The classic examples given were roof remodels and water heater replacements. And I'll guarantee you that your current assistant city attorney has changed his water heater in a different jurisdiction without a permit because it happened on a Saturday, and forget him. I'm sorry.
You weren't going to get one anyway.
This is on YouTube.
It's okay. The statute of limitations has run. But, I mean, it's a very human thing to do anyway. So the idea being, if you encourage people to come in for the permits, then you get the inspections to make sure things are done correctly. So using that example, it's easier from a city perspective because you can do an actual visual inspection of the work there that's done and make sure it's all according to code. You don't have to do any destruction. You don't have to take any walls down or remove things or get an engineering report. That's an easy check. The other philosophical decision you have the right to make is whether or not you want full cost recovery. Most places do. And so I'm not doing a value judgment on that. Both are perfectly legal, and that's my lane. So a previous decision of a city council a long time ago here was, we don't want to do 100% full cost recovery. I haven't checked minutes, so I may be getting my percentages off a little bit, but I'm just using memory. But my memory was that they were basically hoping for 75%. The theory being that everybody is benefited by having building inspections, et cetera, because one of those reasons is for protecting the neighborhood. If the house is built according to the fire code, it makes it less likely that the neighbor house is going to burn down as a result of something that happened there. So that decision, I think, was they were hoping for 75%. Now, the proof is in the pudding here. Time has gone by, fees haven't gone up, and it's dropped down to 66%. So that previous council, their philosophical decision of wanting 75%, they might want to up fees to that. But you have a full range of opportunity here to make your best policy decision, right from 100% cost recovery to whatever level you think is appropriate for Solvang. And you can also include discussion of single items like we discussed before. I just wanted to get that out there.
Thank you. I'd like to say about the water heater, this city doesn't penalize you for coming in after the fact, after you install the water heater, so that you can't have the inspection. That's a point to be made here. Is there any discussion or question of the staff report? I did have another one, the escalation clause that you're talking about. Yes. Is that going to be subject to council approval, or would that be just automatic?
I think our recommendation would be that it would be just an automatic adjustment with a consumer price index or some sort of indices that reflect the costs of goods and services that would be standard and customary for that industry. I think that Jeff knows of a couple of other indices that are used. There's an engineering index. Jeff, do you want to come up and just briefly talk about maybe what those percentages can be year over year?
The Department of Labor publishes an index of government workers, essentially COLA, but tracks the cost of government workers, and that's the most germane because that's really the cost that we're talking about here. So that's the industry standard, is to use Department of Labor government index.
I just have an aversion to automatic increases. That's all. I think it should be brought to the council for discussion to go ahead with the increase or not.
Based on circumstances. I'm interject, but the one rationale that I see, that I hear, is that having an index, applying an index periodically, prevents that once you do this again, it's another similar study, maybe it be 10 years down the road, that there won't be a large gap, maybe there'll be a small gap. And that's the whole rationale for that index,
Sure.
is to try to keep from separating the cost from the revenues.
I understand that. Do you have a comment?
Yes. I think I brought up the fact that I was surprised that we hadn't looked at this since 2004, but I'm also not wanting to go a full 100% recovery on this because I want to remain business friendly, and I think to go out and hit people with this right off the bat could be detrimental, especially when we were looking at the topics of sphere of influence and annexation, and we're trying to instead increase our infill. I think jumping to 100% recovery at this point would be a mistake. So I'm hoping we can get some more comment on this.
Any other comments?
I personally would fully agree with that. But also there's just some other history. When I think it was right during Karen and I's campaign time, we had the whole issue over a sign ordinance. And we had 3 votes on this council to reevaluate our sign ordinance. And it's now almost 2 years, and that's never come back to the council for us to reevaluate. So I guess where I'm kind of going with this is we also have things like California code check. We have, all kinds of other things that could possibly be reevaluated here, and that might change the cost structure. So I would be very hesitant to make any changes to the current cost structure until we can get some of these other things done that we started off to do.
My understanding is that the code check, is a standalone contract for services, and this, although it interfaces with the plan check in terms of the what they get as part of our permit fees per their contract, this is separate from the issue of code check or the cost of the services that they provide to the city.
Okay.
Brad has more experience with this than I do.
Yeah,
but
their contract is set up that they get 70% of the fee. So if you raise the fee, they'll get 70% of the increased fee. But they get 70% of our building fees is how it's set up in their contract.
California code check does?
Yes.
Okay.
Because they're the building official and inspector.
And how long have we been using California code check for?
Since 2004.
Okay. So that's now 14 years since we've reevaluated California code check?
No, we did an RFP about
2015, I believe.
3 years ago, and they came out as the top, I think we only had 2 or 3 firms apply or provide a proposal, and so they were chosen as
the city can run an RFP at any time they wish for any of our contracted services, except when there's it's limited by a duration of a contract. Am I correct, Roy? So if we wanted to open up the RFP process for code check, that's sort of a different conversation here than what the fees we are talking about.
I think this
tonight,
is good, and to see the numbers and see where we're at. But I personally would like to see us kind of reevaluate things a little bit in conjunction with this, and see if there's ways that we can make things more friendly, more business friendly. We just had it on our council goals that we wanted to. The infill was one of our priorities. So
I wait to hear what the details on that. We have not gotten to that goal yet.
so again, it's a little bit of the cart before the horse right now. So my move on this would be to receive and file with no action, but I would like to direct staff to put this out to put things like California code out to bid, kind of reevaluate the whole planning process, make sure it's as business friendly as possible, make sure we can attract needed infill. That's my stance on that, and I'll make the motion on that just to see if anyone's willing to take it.
I'd like to make a comment first.
Yeah, there's still some discussion.
But there can still be a motion on the table.
Motion's on the table. That's fine.
I refer you to page 107. as a comparison survey, the city of Solvang. I don't think it's our job to subsidize construction. And this chart tells me that we've been subsidizing construction in the community of Solvang. When I was reading through this and they were quoting what square footage was costing of a building, I was going, what country did this come from? I mean, we cannot build a house for what the square footage is quoted here. I just want us to be careful that we make sure that the people that are working for us, they are not working for free, and we are not subsidizing their salaries because people are not paying their fair share of the construction costs. That's my concern. So I'd like to move forward. And this is, to me, this is atrocious that we have not done anything since 2004. We are so out of whack here. So
I can understand that standpoint. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more competitive and stick to our council goals.
Well, how is it being competitive when we're subsidizing construction?
We can reorganize potentially. It has to be reevaluated, but just even California code check alone, that could be redone in a way that saves money. It's all about controlling cost. So if you were to reduce, if you're saying that we're 30% subsidizing and you reduce your cost by 35%, then you're no longer subsidizing.
I just want you to study the numbers on page 107.
Go ahead, Holly.
Well, if you look at, I mean, they have their plan check costs also. On these, when you look at the comparisons, they have plan check costs that are reflected there too. I mean, I believe that Jeff would say that the numbers that are offered up as comparison are strictly the building permit fees, and again our relationship with Code Check, the services that are provided by Code Check, I mean, it is certainly within your prerogative to direct staff to
reevaluate,
analyze that, and to run an RFP, talk to other jurisdictions, do whatever that would be useful and for council and to receive in terms of information.
That's what I'd like to see.
This building validation data that's in the last appendix, I guess, of the report, that's page 109 and on?
Yes.
Are those new numbers or are those current numbers?
Those are our current piece.
The current pieces, will they change? Or we're going in with these numbers and they'll hold?
The valuation, the valuation, come on up, Jeff, if you would, to answer that. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a two-step process. It's similar to personal income taxes when calculating building fees. The first step is to figure out the value. Now, it's not market value, it is construction value.
Right.
Very different. Construction value of the property, that's number one. And number two is taking that valuation and applying it to a fee table. So it's a two-step process. So I think on page 109, those are nationwide. They call them building valuation factors that are published by the ICC, the Industry Code Council, nationwide factors. They're a little bit generic, but it's used to basically take any type of a proposed, commercial, it could be retail, it could be industrial, residential. Take any project, figure out the valuation, and apply it to a single table. That's the whole purpose.
I understand that. My question is this table that's in here, have we been using this table, or has it been adjusted for this study? And if it has been, then if we have show no increases but validation increases, well, our revenues will come up, right? So that's the question. Is our validation tables, are they below these numbers, or are these current? Last end of fiscal year or something?
Well, ask Diane. I honestly, the building valuation data could be from.
Diane.
Come on up if you would.
Can you help us with that?
Do you know?
These are.
Yeah,
These
I
are
think
published,
those-
but they're old.
With the building code, so they
Is
should
this-
be.
are these the
they
ones
would
we
be
are
current with the
currently
building
using?
code.
These move separately from the analysis
Yeah.
we've been asked.
So we're currently using these numbers?
Yeah, I've been using them since '04.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out.
I just want to interject a little bit on the valuation. Understand that in this context, what it is it's a legally acceptable fiction, because the law says you can do 100% cost recovery and no more. A lot of places used a valuation schedule, and there was litigation over that. And what we found was in places where you have lots of annexations and lots of large subdivision developments, so I mean you're getting 1,000 houses in a year, the valuation process ended up with fees too high because the actual cost of inspecting, doing the same little bit of work over, yeah, so while it might have cost these many hours for the first house of 250 each plans, it didn't cost that much all the time. So that approach lost in court. The approach that has won in court is this more fictional valuation scale. And so it doesn't necessarily, that's why we reference the national kind of way of looking at it. It doesn't necessarily represent the actual construction valuation on this. It's a legally acceptable way to reach a fee. And we have proof positive that our fees are legal because our recovery is 66% of what it costs to provide the service. So here, the valuation is legal, but it's still fictional. It's just we picked that method because it's successful in court, not because it's a perfect reflection of the real world.
Do we get comments, anecdotal comments at the counter with, God, these are awful high, or geez, I'm sure glad we're not building in some other place?
Depends on if they're going to be quoted or not.
I would have to say that from what I've heard from my staff, that is definitely not the case. They think they've got a great deal here in Solvang.
And that's another point too. In different areas are going to charge different fees by what the economic standard is of that community. Montecito's fees are going to be different than what our fees are. And you can build a cracker box or you can build a jewel box. And that's going to create different fees. So it's, these astound me.
And anytime you look at a comparison of one jurisdiction to another, and we always do, you have to understand that you're not comparing apples to apples, even though we're comparing a specific fee to a specific fee, because every jurisdiction has both a needed level of service and a desired level of service. And if your level of service, if your business-friendly philosophy says, I want to have fast turnaround, you're going to have more staff sometimes in other jurisdictions to get that fast turnaround. With more staff, that increases the cost, your annual cost of providing the service. And so your fees are going to go up.
Or they might be doing more volume.
Both more volume and just faster turnaround so that people can be addressed. And so those are, you also have philosophical decisions there about which is the best way to get there. And yeah, that's the problem, because a place with a huge volume, they're going to have some economies of scale too sometimes. But you have to compare level of service, because if you have a lot of volume but not an increased level of service, then those places are going to take a long time before they get their permit back out of the system, rather than having a fast. It's just they're never exact, and I think you will also find that, barring some ridiculous examples, you won't really find an actual contract. I'm just going to use a contractor as an example. A contractor isn't going to turn down a contract to do somebody's remodel in Solvang because the fees are either more or less than in another jurisdiction. That's all going to be passed on to the homeowner. Right. Yes, sometimes homeowners are going to decide whether or not to do a remodel based on that as part of their cost. But the market doesn't have people compete in that way. You're not going to have that builder go to Lompoc.
Or they might opt to not get any permits.
The homeowner might.
To accelerate.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're recommending that there are certain specific permits that would have a certain volume that homeowners pull, that we would want to look at perhaps less than 100% cost recovery, because we want to drive the compliance. And in the end, it's better for them when they go to sell their house. They have the permitted work, and we want to encourage that.
We have a motion on the floor. Would you repeat the motion? Because there's been no second yet.
So I was looking to, I want to make sure that we are the most efficient and cost effective with the planning department. So I'd like to take a broader look at this. So with that, I'd like to receive and file this report with no action, and then direct staff to possibly look at reevaluating California code check or any other things we can do to make the planning department more efficient and business friendly.
Is there a second for that motion?
I just want to make a comment. When you file and shelve it on the shelf, that's where it's going to end up staying. And that's my concern. I would like to see it.
There is a second part of my motion that is actually directing this to come back. So I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Give a timeline then. Give a timeline then.
But before we take a vote, we haven't gone to the public.
Mm-hmm.
We need public comment.
Yeah, I have a speaker's list.
Yeah, and Mr. Mendoza and.
I'm speaking on behalf of Michael Mendoza.
Oh, okay.
And he asked me to give this letter to all of you, and there's one for Brad. And I'm going to kind of synopsis it real quick because I like to stay in that 3 minutes. Michael Mendoza has asked me to come here to speak on your behalf, and I'm here on behalf as a community leader of the Chamber of Commerce. Michael owns the Folio, the Solvang Olive Press, and Someday Solvang Flavors, Artesian Boutique Tasting Room. On April 2nd, Michael worked on getting a permit. As of today, Michael has no permit, $10,000 later. The problem is, and we've had 27 businesses come to us to tell us about this situation and problem, is California code check. And I'm going, as you read his letter, I'm going to kind of synopsis it very quickly. The project is still in the planning department with no permit today. He has personally spent over 100 hours. He was up there today. $10,000 in fees at this point and nothing. He would like to say the system is dysfunctional. We need to change the addition. We are not opposed to additional fees, but we need to review the whole system of California code check before we introduce fees. And we do believe, we talked about this at a board meeting today about the fees, but at the same time, the biggest problem is California code check to all of our businesses. We are not business friendly. And Solvang has to become business friendly or you're going to look like State Street. Please remember that. 27 businesses have come, and I told them I would come and talk about this. I don't want to kind of exaggerate.
So, Tracy, you suggest...
Let her finish talking.
I just had a question for her.
Let her finish talking.
Okay, we have asked to maybe streamlining the building department, look at California code check, maybe looking at Solvang and Buellton having a building inspector together and sharing that. And, you know, one of our feasibility studies as part of the tenant mix consultant was to look at signage and look at some of the other things that we said we would look at. And that was why we had talked to Brad about the scope of work we were doing. People are frustrated. And I'm going to tell you, our businesses are frustrated and they're moving to Buellton before they're done. And we've got to help them move this on simpler. We are not against raising the fees. My husband is a contractor, so I'm not against that. We should pay our due fees, but the biggest problem we have here right now is California code check, and if we don't start addressing that issue, we are losing businesses. So please understand that as you make decision tonight.
That's the last speaker slip I have. Is there anybody else wish to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. California code check has been a burr under my saddle for many, many months and years. And we've tried to rectify that by going out on bid, trying to find another code check company. We even sent business to their office in Thousand Oaks. That failed miserably. Originally we had the county do our code checking, and we lost that. We tried to go back to the county. They won't take us. So we're stuck with what's out there, and what's out there is the bid we got from California Code Check right now. So I don't know if there's an answer, but I'm willing to listen to the possibility of an answer.
Can I say this right now, too, on top of it?
Tracy, can you approach the...
California Code Check used to be a owned business by, privately owned business. It's not that way anymore. It's been sold off, and it's a large corporate business now. There's a big difference in how we used to do California Code Check in 2004 and how we do business with them now.
Yes.
And the county uses California Code Check also, so we don't want to go there.
So is there any comments regarding California Code Check?
I believe I've heard that there is some direction that council would like to give to staff regarding an RFP process or investigating options to go check. We can come back to you with some recommendations in that regard. I will remind you again, though, that this is, although this is all part of the approval process of allowing businesses to construct and to come into Solvang. The permit fees are really a different side of that, and we are not recovering our costs, and we will continue to not recover our costs with fees this low. Since 2005.
Help me understand a quick thing. The business permit fee is, for example, $1,000. Code Check gets $700 of that $1,000, or it's another $700 added on to the builder to pay to the Code Check.
It's of the $1,000. So if a contractor comes in and his permit fee is $1,000, I think it's a 70-30 split. Code Check gets 70%, and we get 30%. Okay. Our 30% is helping to cover our building technician position and part of Holly's time.
Okay. Any other discussion? There's a motion on the floor.
And I'm going to second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Would you like to reiterate the discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to hear one more time, because now that I have this letter, I don't think we should really have anything to do with California Code Check.
So my motion addresses that. It's basically giving staff the direction to go out and pursue other options. And I'd also highly encourage, reaching out to the chamber. You just gave them $250,000. Talk to the business community. Let's find out what we need to do to fix this situation. There's tons of different people out there. They're looking for a change. Let's facilitate it. So my motion was to receive and file with no action, and direct staff to put California Code Check out to bid and evaluate any other possible ways of making our planning and development department more efficient.
That's been moved and seconded.
Are we going to be making use of this study at all?
Yeah, well, later on when it comes back, we have the numbers now. We can receive and file this for now with no action, and then wait for staff to come back with other options.
It's been moved and seconded. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Toussaint?
Yes.
Waite?
Yes.
Jameson?
No.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mayor Richardson?
No. That passes with a 3-2. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to item 9.
Item 9, Planning Commission recommendation regarding allowable zone for medical cannabis business.
Staff report.
I'll try and be fairly brief. I will let you know that I've been heavily involved in all of the staff work at the beginning through the Planning Commission till now. So even though I'm going to be brief, it's not glib and just accepting Mr. Fleischman's recommendation. You all know how many times you've addressed this issue. You know how many times it's been to the Planning Commission, and you know that it's come back to you with the Planning Commission's recommendation as to potential legal locations for medicinal cannabis. The staff recommendation, and I concur with it, is to bring back the regular ordinance banning all cannabis uses so that that goes into effect before the urgency ordinance goes out of effect. And then that would give staff time to more regularly approach the issue of what's the best way for Solvang to regulate and allow the medicinal cannabis operation to go into effect. It'd be fairly easy to time that for after the November election, so that you wouldn't have any extensive delay, assuming that the tax is approved. So you wouldn't be losing revenue. My personal reason for that is that it's a highly complicated and ever-evolving area of law. The city of Grover Beach, which got started early on with their approaches, had to amend their ordinance twice now since they adopted. It's not Grover Beach's fault. It's not their council's fault. It's not their city attorney's fault. It's the fault of the situation. This is evolving law. The state has at least 3 different state regulatory agencies that are involved in passing the regulations for all the state licensed operations, and they are sometimes conflicting. And it's difficult to navigate how to do that. If you may have read recently where the city of Rio Grande, which was early on, an early adopter, so to speak, of the delivery service, they had to close down what they thought was the legally licensed and operating delivery service in town because there ended up being a definitional problem in their code as compared to the state licenses for warehousing, for storing the perfectly legal cannabis products. And so that business had to close down. And again, that wasn't the fault of the city council there or their lawyer. It's an ever-evolving change. So I'm personally kind of reluctant to just grab somebody else's code section, do the find and replace, and put Solvang in instead of whatever that city was, and then just changing the numbers of the code sections to make it match our nomenclature. Some of that is just pride. That seems more like word processing than legal work. But a lot of it is not wanting to rush that product through when your planning staff and we haven't had the time to give it actual thought on how it's going to work in Solvang. So that's the reason for our recommendation to come back with the second reading on the ordinance that bans, just to give us a little more time. That being said, if the direction of the council is to come back with an ordinance that legalizes locations and does our best that we can do within the time frame allowed to regulate the sale of medicinal cannabis before the urgency ordinance expires, we can do that.
When does the urgency ordinance expire?
I think it's
It
in
seemed it was
September.
August.
Yes, it's in September.
And how long of it has it been in place?
It will have been in place basically 2 years by then.
Okay. So we've been...
Previous direction was never to legalize any marijuana uses, so that's been this council has a different philosophy than the previous council. So we didn't spend, during the time frame when the original urgency ordinance was adopted until that most recent decision, we'd never been directed to spend any time on how to go about legalizing and regulating any aspect of the cannabis business. The reason all of those different types of ordinances were before the Planning Commission the first time the Planning Commission looked at it was simply because I made a decision to do that so that they had to look at the full expanse, so that when it came up to the City Council, you wouldn't be required to send every potential change back to the Planning Commission. You would be able to proceed however which way you wanted. You made a decision that you wanted to hear what they thought about location of medical cannabis dispensaries, but you could have decided that you didn't have to send that back because we covered everything for them precisely because of that. And, you know, I think that was a wise decision to include them in the process. But I still remain with the recommendation that we go just a little bit slower on the regulation. But like I said, if the direction of this council is let's get that done, we'll get it done.
Is there any other questions? The staff report. Seeing none, then we'll go to the public for comment. We've got 2 speaker slips. Chris? Followed by Rick Soto.
Thanks again, Mr. Mayor, and again, thank you for taking this issue head on. It's difficult, I know, and controversial in many ways. Initially, I was against allowing medical marijuana until I spoke to a large number of people here in the city, in the valley, and other places. They were able to, for example, I know a lot of people have found it to be the efficacy to be better than using opioid drugs and other things with more serious side effects. My sister died from stomach cancer in 2012, and she had to rely on medical marijuana for this reason. It helped ease her pain, nausea, and side effects of chemotherapy. It eased her suffering from intestinal inflammation from the stomach cancer, and it helped her with her appetite and to deal with anxiety with the realization that she was going to pass. So, again, I really sympathize with people who use medical marijuana and would choose that over traditional pharmaceutical things. In my extensive research, I convinced myself, and I'm happy to share the links with all of you, that the risks of, I should say, let me rephrase that the extensive benefits of medical marijuana clearly outweigh the socioeconomic risks for Solvang. And as I understand it, the California legislature has already legalized medical marijuana in a de facto way, and as he was explaining, it's an evolving law, but they are hell-bent on making it legal, whether we like it or not, whether we're ready for it or not. So I encourage the council to make the most of this difficult situation, difficult issue, by supporting a medical marijuana dispensary in the city to serve the needs of Solvang residents so they don't have to go outside of the city to Solvang, or to Santa Barbara or Lompoc or Santa Maria, and perhaps giving more time to study the economic benefits of excise and sales taxes as a means of growing and diversifying the city's budget revenues. In California alone, there's a number of consultants, for example, ArcView Consultants estimated that the legal and medical sales are projected to be $3.7 billion in 2018, this year, and another $5 billion next year in 2019. And BDS Analytics found that the marijuana industry employed 121,000 people in California in 2017, and that figure is going to more than double by the end of this decade. So, in summary, I just want to encourage the council to take advantage of this new and growing source of revenue, and otherwise we'll end up forfeiting it to other cities who are able and willing to sell medical marijuana from their dispensaries.
Thank you, Chris. Rick Soto?
And hey, Brad, could you turn the air down? It's like, maybe it's because I'm bald, but.
That's it. Good to see you tonight.
Good, glad to have you here.
I'm here to tell you to keep medicinal marijuana as far away from San Jose Valley as possible. Don't let it in. Fight the state. Fight everything. It is a negative thing. I have 30 years of full-time gospel ministry. I've traveled the world. I don't want to go on and speak that way. I have 13 years as a police chaplain. What you're led to believe is that you can control this. You cannot. My local experience here with countless families, and I'm not embellishing that at all, with countless families, is that someone gets medical marijuana in the family, and that makes its way all the way down to youth. And that's when I get called in, because I'm not the first line of defense. Somebody else is the first line of defense, and second line of defense, and third line of defense. So they call a pastor when they're as desperate as a family can be. And then I walk into a home or a situation that's very tense and figure out, how did we get here? And on this issue, which we're talking about, medicinal marijuana, that issue is with countless families, and I'm not embellishing that at all, who find that marijuana in the hands of teenagers, who go to our Santa Ynez High School, who find it in junior high kids. And research will tell us, which I can quote for you, that this is actually a gateway drug. And neither you nor I want to live in a place where we are helping children to be addicted to drugs. Marijuana creates problems in the neurotransmitters of dopamine in the brain. Dopamine is what you need to feel good and rewarded. When you have done a good job and you feel good, dopamine is an important part of our health. Marijuana and medicinal marijuana interrupts that. You can't control this. Keep it away from here. We're such a small city. Where are you going to put it? How are you going to keep it away from an elementary school? Where are you going to go? You walk a minute or two and you're at an elementary school, let alone that dispensary. When I think about a dispensary, I think about, if it's medical marijuana, why is it not bought at Rite Aid pharmacy? It's obviously part of a drug culture that a certain group of people want to produce. And we do not want a drug culture. We do not want a dope culture. Dope cultures do not create the kind of heroism and bravery that we have always stood for as a country. We do not want that in our youth. And I came here, I moved here a good bit ago because our valley was insulated from some of these things. And the idea of bringing medical marijuana to us, and the idea that you can have it and control it in any way, shape, or form is wrong. And I have professional experience of 30 years, and I'm not alone on this. So I would just tell you that this is a bad thing. And I would just ask you guys, just morally and personally, that you don't want to be known for this.
I don't want to cut you off
I
mid-sentence.
know. You don't want to be,
Rick,
you don't want to be
your time
known
is
for
up.
being the council that votes yes on this.
Thank you. I have no other speaker slip. Does anyone else wish to speak? Aaron Peterson.
Evening, Aaron Peterson, Solvang. I know Chris, I know Rick. I'm not going to talk about emotions on it. I'm also on the Planning Commission, and we voted 5-0 to not have any sale of any cannabis at all in the city. That was the first go-around. Then you folks sent it back to us and said, if we're going to have it, where would you want it? And some of you saw the meeting, some of you watched it on TV, and we said, holy smokes, you're holding a gun to our head. You're making us pick a spot, something that we still, 5-0, don't believe that we should be doing here in the city of Solvang yet, if ever. We looked at it and said, from a zoning standpoint, non-emotional standpoint, that it doesn't work within a small city. The questions are, is the county allowing it in Santa Ynez, in Las Olivas? Is Buellton allowing it? Which cities are allowing it? Are we a magnet and we're going to be the first in our area? Are we the first 20 miles away, 30 miles away, 15 miles away? Is that what we want to do? There's no emergency on this. Unless we had a room full of folks that needed it for medical purposes, which I believe Chris is correct. There are those absolutely that need it. And I know Rick is correct because I was a DA and I was a drug prosecutor for many, many years. So you have both sides of it. Is there a need for it that we can't have it delivered to their homes? Is there a need for my friends drive to Costco and get their drugs because it's cheaper for their cholesterol than they get at Rite Aid or at Star Drugs? Is that the option? Do we have to have it here in the city of Solvang yet? What is the purpose of rushing it to do it? Unless there's this huge need and there are people that can't get it, oh my gosh, and as Chris's sister went through this horrible disease, needed it and she couldn't get it, then you got me. But until that happens, why rush it? Your attorney for the city says, take a breath. Look at it and see what the regulations are. It is an ever-changing world out there. People have said, well, the state's going to jam it down our throat and we better act beforehand. I don't believe that for a minute. I've heard that at every conference I've been to on low-income housing, to senior housing, to rezoning, to bike lanes. The state. You panic, and just do. Take a breath. Take a breath. Take a breath. We don't know what the traffic is going to hold. You put it in a zone. We know what restaurants, because we have studies. We know what houses. We know apartment buildings. We know hotels. You're going to put it in a professional office. You're going to put it in a C3 zone, which, gun to our head, we said 3Z zone only, 3C only. We have no idea what the traffic is going to be. $1.3 million, one gentleman says his gross sales, is that divided by $10 sales, $100 sales? Is that 10,000 visits? Is that 100,000 visits a year? Where the cars park? How does the traffic work? We've got this little city that's a jewel, and we need to take it slow. There's nobody rushing us to go do this unless there's a hue and cry and people can't get the medical marijuana.
Thank you, Aaron. I have no other speak. Anyone else wish to speak? Come on, Jeff.
Thank you, Council. Jeff Clay, City of Solvang. Aaron and Rick put it well. I don't have too much to really add, but just for conscience sake, I wanted to say something. Two quick things. It's a bit pragmatic, but I think it does make some sense. I think image, as shallow as that sounds, but I think image is something we got to really contend with here. It's my understanding that Buellton has declined, Santa Ynez has declined. I don't see Solvang as the marijuana center for the valley here, legal and or otherwise. You know, you talk about medical cannabis, it's sales and distribution of marijuana, of drugs. I don't know how else to say it. You know, we're known for a lot of good things, great restaurants, hotels, good wine, selling weed. I don't think so. Don't think that really fits. And lastly, and more importantly, our youth. In less than a year, I'm going to have grandkids here growing up in the valley. Do we want to introduce more drugs to our valley? Again, we can use a lot of vocabulary, cannabis, whatnot, drugs into our valley. There's a big push to have really locks on our medicine chests. If the opioid addiction is terrible, we have kids getting into medicine cabinets. Can you imagine with this? You know how easy it is to get one of these so-called marijuana cards? You can get it online. It is there. It is going to increase the volume of drugs in this wonderful little city that I love. More drugs, more crime. That's a tough one to argue. More drugs, more crime. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jeff. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? George? I'm sorry? Robert, I'm sorry. George, my brother's name is George. My brother's name is Robert George.
Thank you for letting me speak real quick.
You bet.
I see both sides. I was a reserve officer. I've seen life and death because of drugs. However, I have 82% maybe of my family have all died from cancer. And I wish they all had the access to opioids to help them go through their pain. Terminal, done. The gentleman states that he came to this valley because he thought we were insulated from drugs. I'm sorry, I strongly disagree. I've been here 53 years. We've always had drugs in this town. We've always had marijuana in this town. And the officers who work here and the citizens who work here have done their best to make sure it is limited. As for children, strong discipline and education will prevent them from going into medicine cabinets, taking opioids. As for marijuana, it's been in our elementary schools since I was in elementary school at Vista Del Mar, and I was in second grade, and I saw 8th graders smoking it. Vista Del Mar, class of 62, total school. I'm not for marijuana being in our town, but I also am for non-opioid treatments, being my father just passed away from it. It's a very difficult thing to go through. It's a very difficult thing to have to decide. Our grandkids, my grandkids, and my kids are exposed to drugs every single day. It's our responsibility to educate our kids not to use it. You can't just say drugs are the problem. Adults are the problem. My uncles use it. Their kids used it because they did not tell them not to use it. I never used it till I got older, tried it. It's not fun. I get sleepy. It's our responsibility to educate our kids as we are to be educated how we're going to handle this. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Robert. Is there any other comments? Roy?
I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that I'm in my lane here. Medicinal cannabis is perfectly legal. So in recommending that we do the regular ordinance, I'm not making a recommendation that the council rethink its policy decision. I'm relating it not to try and get you to rethink the basic decision about going forward with allowing a medicinal cannabis location. I'm just asking for a little more time so I can do that to my standard of care and feel that I presented you with the best approach possible. So I want to make sure that my lane's legal. It's perfectly legal to have made a decision to allow medicinal cannabis. So I'm not resisting that. I'm just resisting doing it too fast for my standard.
Based on that and the recommendation for the staff, I'm going to break this up into two different parts, A and B. The recommendation for Part A is to provide direction to staff to return on the 23rd with a second reading of the ordinance prohibiting the establishment of businesses within the city. Let's discuss that.
I think that we had some great comments, and I appreciate everybody's perspective, and it's like right on point. Every single one, everyone that commented is right on point. But I think that if we go with staff recommendation, it kind of covers everything, and we have the time to assess the situation. We're not in a rush. I mean, that was the best thing about it, is like we don't have to actually rush to do this. And it's still out there, it's still accessible. But then I don't think we also have to fear that if there is a demand here for medical use due to the elderly population or growing of, it could be a good thing for a specific market or care market, I guess, elderly, where it does make sense and it's more accessible and it's maybe highly, even more regulated to some degree. But yeah, that's my comment on it.
Any other discussion on
Yes.
Point A? Yes.
I agree with our attorney that there is no rush on this, and that we do have to give this a lot of thought and go through this methodically. I would propose that I was actually fine with the ordinance, but then I sat back and gave it an awful lot of thought, and I thought, well, maybe we can come back with a resolution to this sooner than September, because we don't know exactly when in September. We still don't have that, when the emergency ordinance expires exactly. But what I would like to do is be able to authorize, give direction to the staff to hire a consultant. We do know that the medical marijuana and recreational marijuana are legal. I'd like to see us in a position where we'll be able to regulate this more effectively and in the right way. So I don't want to jump into it, but I don't want to ban this right off the bat either. So I was hoping to come to a conclusion that if we go ahead and go ahead with the ordinance, that we authorize our staff a certain dollar amount to hire and engage a consultant firm to aid us with the proper vetting and education on the ordinances, because I know it is an ever-changing ordinance. So that's where I stand on this right now.
Comments?
I can go along with that.
Comment?
What kind of person would we be hiring? Are you talking about another law firm?
No, there are consultants out there that that bring information to cities and discuss the types of clinics and the requirements for registrations for state and county. Just kind of what Roy's talking about. We don't have enough solid information at this point, I feel, to jump in right off the bat and approve opening up medical marijuana dispensaries at this point. But I am pleased that we have taken the right steps where we have actually been able to choose a location and be able to get this on the ballot as a ballot measure to be able to tax revenue should we decide to do this. But I don't, my fear is that if we don't bring this back sooner than the September meeting, that it might get tabled as a non-priority. It is a priority. I was just up in Monterey with the League of California Cities, and the state, by the way, was there, and the state did say that they will be ramming this down our throats. If you are a city that is left with no ordinance, look out. So we have to come up with something. But I don't think we should wait till September to do this. I think we can do it a little sooner. And I have full confidence in our capable staff to be able to pull all of this together and give us some education, some more education on this.
I think your suggestion comes under Part B.
All right.
Okay, and I would agree with that under Part B. Part A, regarding the extension of the reading of the second ordinance, let's get back to that discussion. Can I have a motion then? I'll make the motion. that we follow staff recommendation on item 9A. Is there a second?
It's 9-1A.
Sorry?
9-1A.
9-1A, yes.
And just a question, legal. So if we adopt this, I guess what was our urgency ordinance as an ordinance?
Well, we would adopt it as a regular ordinance.
Okay.
And I'm choosing that word very carefully because a lot of times we get sloppy and we use the word permanent as opposed to urgent, and it's not permanent because regular ordinances can be changed anytime you want, as often as you want. So they have no permanency. So I've tried to train myself to use the word regular now, which means you have a first reading, a second reading, and it passes by a majority, whereas and it has a life until changed. An urgency ordinance has only one reading, it takes a 4/5 vote, and it has a temporary life unless extended and can last up to 2 years from its inception. Other than that, same
That answered my
principles
question.
apply.
It's still 3 votes, not 4 votes.
A regular ordinance is 3 votes.
Oh, okay.
My concern is that there's people in the wings waiting for us not to pass this, with their applications already for licenses and wanting to do business in the city. And if we tarry or dilly-dally with this thing, we're going to lose it. So that's the thinking behind my motion is to go for the second reading, become an ordinance, and then we can discuss adjustments to the medical portion of it under the second part of this recommendation under B.
Now, I want to make it clear, your city attorney's office does recommend coming back on July 23rd to do the second reading of the regular ordinance.
That's right.
All right. We're not making that recommendation under a perceived threat from our part of an actual business being able to open. There's 2 threats. One threat is one could try. The state law that was passed very specifically said this is going to be in compliance with the state zoning procedures, whereby if your city has what's called permissive zoning, in other words, you're allowed to do listed things in a particular zone, and cannabis is not listed there as permissive, then you can't do it. The only city that has had to litigate over that, in other words, they didn't pass an ordinance, someone came in and tried to establish one, won. Now, so there is a threat that you could get involved in litigation that would be expensive. I think you'd actually win it, but it's still litigation that doesn't gain you anything is the Lawyers Full Employment Act. So that's why we recommend getting the regular ordinance in place so we don't fall into the Lawyers Full Employment Act. I don't really think the threat of us losing is that great, but it would be expensive to win because it's full-blown litigation with people with money. And I don't think, from our perspective, that we need 7-8 months to get to a point where we feel, from our attorney's perspective, that we've done due diligence and met our standard of care to make recommendations to you on how your ordinance allowing and regulating medicinal cannabis should look.
What is the date that we could expect you to come back with that?
Oh, in my mind, I had something that would be in place shortly after November, because in my mind, you don't want, if you're going to proceed, you don't want to lose revenue. The tax passes, there's no point in waiting unless we're compelled to for some reason, and I don't think it's unreasonable at all for our firm to meet the standard of care to have an adequate ordinance in place in November. So
that would be the first reading in November?
Yes.
Okay.
Brad, you got your finger on the microphone.
Well, I want to kind of, so the item was, if you recall, when we had the ban, there was a discussion about changing the word to non-medical marijuana on the ban. So not cannabis, non-medical cannabis. So that was the draft that you had. We moved it to second reading with the intent that we were going to change our zoning code, which is what did not allow medical cannabis dispensaries. It didn't have a location for them to be. So that's where we had been heading. And so I think the point of this staff report is we wanted to at least get that other ban in, that bans the distribution, the cultivation, all of those other things, and work on this zoning of a medicinal cannabis operation. And so that I think in the September, I think what Dave was thinking was we would be in place when the election came. You'd be able to tax it if you had it set up where one could be, and they could be moving forward towards that. So yeah, I think maybe we're all talking about the same target in this initial ordinance of the ban. The second reading is it bans everything but the non-medical cannabis. I mean the medical. I'm sorry. Not talking backwards to myself, but yeah.
So you're saying that the current this evening would be the ban of everything other than the delivery of medical marijuana?
Not tonight. You're just going to direct us to bring back that second reading at the next meeting, and that's where you would ban the ban that we had. You'd do the second reading, and that would get adopted as at
our next meeting
at it's July 23rd meeting.
Okay, I mean, because everyone realizes that we are receiving medical cannabis deliveries in Solvang.
We had not banned those.
Right.
Yes,
well,
when medical cannabis became legal.
That's really something that we can't regulate because we don't know where it's coming from, who's getting it. We just don't. And I strongly feel that we need to be able to at least regulate some of this the best we can.
As I said, that was something that your current ordinance on medicinal cannabis did not ban distribute or delivery into the city. And we may have maintained that in the new version of your ordinance that was the ban. So those two pieces were still excluded. So yeah, tonight all you're going to do is direct us to come back with that second reading, or not. Or make it yeah.
There's a motion on the floor regarding this, looking for a second. The motion is staff recommendation to provide direction to return on July 23rd 2018, with the second reading of the ordinance prohibiting the establishment of cannabis business within the city. That's my motion. Well, the motion dies for lack of a second. Now what?
So I'll make the motion to not direct staff at this point in time and to move on to the second part of the discussion.
By doing nothing is the same thing as making your motion. There's no motion on the floor to do anything. So you're making a motion to continue.
Well, I'm
doing
just
that.
tabling. I would just like to move on to the next. We got.
Oh, you wanted to, we can go down to the next item.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. If there's nobody going to do anything on A, then we'll go to B. Provide direction to the staff to return to the council September 2018 with the municipal code changes to authorize medical cannabis businesses within specific zones of the city as recommended by the Planning Commission, and to implement comprehensive regulations governing the operation of such businesses. Do we want to discuss that? Have we discussed it?
So I kind of like what Karen was saying earlier, and I do think that we need to hire a consultancy firm to kind of aid us in some of these processes with regard to the ordinance or even the vetting process in Solvang. So would it be trying to recraft what you were saying, but
maybe something along the lines maybe of, because what brought up what the point there was to with the delivery service, that's happening anyway. So if there's an established place here of regulation, would that be better served to the community due to the fact that it's not just at random and it's coming in from who knows where?
Mm-hmm. I mean, right now, the way I see it, we have retail at your home service.
Yeah, so it's no matter what. So with the study, I mean, I guess with the study, I'd like to know if and what kind of impact would, how much would that absorb of outside unreferenced product or marijuana? And can we get a quantitative figure on what that looks like? I mean, is it can it absorb 100% of the influence from outside, or are we looking at 10%? But I think a study would be a fair balance to that being realistic. To be honest with you, I don't know what type of consultant it would
So
be.
I think there's one. I wish Holly was still here.
Yeah, it's HDL.
HDL.
They're a
okay.
taxing consultant.
I was going to
but
say
they
HDT.
are now become specialists in the cannabis industry. So they'll come in and help you set up a process to vet dispensaries. And that's
Well, what about I'm looking at more of like a market study or like a.
Well, you're looking like an economic analysis on whether
it's even viable, like if it's viable for the medical, and would it absorb some of the outside delivery services? So like if people are just driving it in anyways, you can call them up and get it. Would there be any value or would there be any benefit to have some type of small thing?
I think it would be difficult for them to grasp what that quantity is that you're comparing to.
Right.
And
well,
it's forever going to be difficult to grasp that as long as federal law still makes everything illegal and it's always a cash business, because everything you look at is going to be anecdotal instead of actual records. Mm-hmm. And so that part's going to be tough. But that also makes it
But
tough.
I'm sure a consultancy such as HDL that's been, as you said, been working with several cities has seen patterns such as, how much revenue generated, et cetera, and would be able to give examples to cities such as, I think I even have an email from someone saying that the city of Fresno, or I forget where it was, but they, when they put in a dispensary, their alcohol sales dropped by 15%.
HDL's ability to analyze sales tax data it is phenomenal. They're pretty much the only ones around the state. So that's the kind of, but that's an actual figure. It doesn't address what I understood the other question to be, which is brick and mortar medicinal cannabis, what effect does that have on outside deliveries as compared to inside deliveries? I don't know that we'd ever be able to get real on that, but the dollar figures from sales tax reports, absolutely. And comparing sales tax from marijuana sales or cannabis sales to alcohol sales, those are all real numbers that they have access to.
And there's no way that we can control what comes into the city of Solvang in a delivery service.
But if you had a brick and mortar store.
The short answer is no.
Well, I don't know, Sheriff.
Well, it could take a lot more than our one deputy service unit.
Yeah, that's in other words, if under the current setup, if you have a state licensed delivery service, we're allowed to ban them from having a brick and mortar location in the city of Solvang, but we aren't allowed to ban a state licensed delivery service from delivering to somebody in Solvang. So, and I'm not even addressing the difficulties of policing illegal marijuana. I'm just talking about, and then we all have our stories of our fathers or our mothers-in-law in my case, and she got herself a card, and the guy who delivered to her trailer home, you would have thought, I'm giving away that I grew up in Berkeley, you would have thought he was selling insurance. He showed up, he had a suit on and a very nice looking briefcase, and he walked in. There's no way in the world that even the most well-trained sheriff or police officer could have been able to tell by looking, as this guy went about his business, what he was doing. And his was technically legal now. At that time, it was sketchy in terms of delivery. But still, that part's real. But there's some things we can do and some things we can't. Now, if we aren't going to do the second reading, then we need to come back faster with the ordinance that legalizes and regulates.
That is where I'm going.
So with that being said, Brad, do you have any ideas on what kind of fee would be involved to engage HDL?
I don't. We've not done something like that, so I'd just be pulling a number.
You haven't seen like what other cities are?
I have not seen what they've used for stuff like that. So, but I think if your intent is to get this structured and have a consultant give you representation, we're not. I mean, September's not a realistic time. I'll tell you right now. This is going to take some time to even get the cost estimate from them to do the work, and then have you guys sign a contract. I mean, you're not going to make September. I'll just tell you that. But we can look into what that was. Well, but I think Roy's saying is where are we on the other read, the second reading of the urgency replacement ordinance?
Well, no, I wasn't trying to do that. I was just saying if we're not going to do the second reading, I got to bring the other one in faster.
So, I'll try crafting something here. So I'll move that we authorize staff up to $35,000 to hire and engage a consultancy firm to aid the council with regard to medical cannabis ordinance and vetting process, and provide direction additionally for the council to return with changes to our municipal code.
Is there a second for that motion?
I have a question. So we're not addressing A?
Still come back to A.
I just don't want us to be hanging out there.
I agree.
Second the motion.
Second it. That's for B, correct?
Did you second the motion?
He seconded the motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Toussaint?
Yes.
Zimmerman?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes. Yes.
Wait?
Yes.
Mayor Richardson?
I don't want to, but yes. Now, let's go back to the section A. Since we've resolved that we're going to study it, let's protect ourselves by going to the second reading.
I agree.
I agree also.
Okay, so I'll make, well, can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's moved and second. Will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Karen,
Councilmember
you're next.
Jameson.
Yes.
Wait.
Yes.
Toussaint.
Yes.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes, but that passed with a 5-0. Thank you all.
Oh, it's worse than birthing a child.
Salary, but
No, he's leaving.
we're up against this. We're up against the city protocol.
To make sure that we're able to vet these people and look into it. Yeah.
We're up against the protocol.
I think, based on the action, we would be able to come back with formal council approval of a contract for a consultant. Well, depends on how long it takes us to get somebody to respond within the budget. Because if I'm sitting in your chair, I also want to know what they're going to give me for that. I don't want to just.
I'd like to see. I'd like to see.
Holly has reached out to HDL.
I'd like to. Yeah, I think there's already some advance notice. I'd like to see it by the 23rd.
And they know there's a $35,000 limit,
which is
it's the next meeting.
I mean, we can have something on for the next meeting, and you can decide. But I'm just saying, I don't see us. I wasn't interpreting the action as let's go out and sign a contract, just from a staff level.
So I'd like to see a contract proposed on the 23rd.
Right. Okay. Come back.
We're up.
Or else we know what happens to A.
We're up against. Excuse me. We're up against a council policy about. We're past 10 o'clock. We have additional agenda items. We have agenda item 10 and council reports in a closed session. We can continue on if you want to, or we can terminate at this point.
Personally, I say let's knock it out, but maybe we can hold off on council reports.
On what?
Council reports.
Oh, those are important.
Is everybody agreed to go on?
Yes.
Okay. Item 10.
Very short report. Go ahead.
Item 10, resolution providing salary and benefits to unrepresented employees.
Staff report.
Mr. Fleischman handled all those negotiations for you and at your direction. As I understand it, there's two resolutions in front of you. One is based upon your direction in regards to the meet for process with the unrepresented employees, and the other was assuming that you would want to do the same thing for your city manager. But that wasn't based on discussion. So you don't have to do the part where because the city manager was not part of the unrepresented employees group. So both of those are before you. If the resolution comports with what you felt your direction was to Mr. Fleischman, then you can adopt it and you can pick if you want to do the one that involves the city manager or not.
Are there any questions of staff report? Seeing none, we'll go to the public for comment. Is there any public comment? Geez, here's your chance. Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Can I have a discussion or commotion or promotion? Motion?
I'll move that we adopt the one that with the city manager separate.
That what?
With the city manager separate.
Separate manager separate. There's a resolution. I mean, there's a motion to adopt the resolution with the city manager accepted. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Recall the roll, please.
Councilmember Toussaint.
Yes.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
Jameson.
No.
Wait.
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
No. That passes with the 3-2.
I can ask why? Why no?
Because I think that he should have the same representation as the rest of the staff.
Okay.
So, okay, with that, we aren't going to discuss the other one. Okay, let's do a quick question about committee reports.
No, we postponed those.
I'm sorry?
We postponed those.
We did.
Yeah, we
Yes.
decided we'll do those the next.
We decided that, did we?
Yes, we did.
Excuse me, but I got the gavel.
No, we decided that.
Is there any?
Do we have a consensus to bypass
Just answer the question. Is there any council reports? Yes or no?
Okay. I have one council report that I did meet.
I'm not asking you to give it. I'm just asking a question.
Oh.
Is there council reports? And there is one. Okay, so we can delay that one until next time.
Yes, we can. Certainly can.
All right. That's all I was trying to find out. God almighty. Okay, we're going to adjourn to a closed session. Will you please read the notice?
Item 13, closed session, Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency representative, city attorney, unrepresented employees.
Okay, we're adjourned to closed session.